I'm going to call the meeting of the Commerce Committee to order. I need to ask everyone who's standing in the back to have a seat. We need people to be having a seat. That's a new protocol, I guess. Thank you.
Good morning.
We do have a quorum. Our first item of business is approval of our minutes from March 20th, 2024. Representative Katiza-Wattoon, do you have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the March 20th minutes.
Representative Katiza-Wattoon moves approval of our minutes from March 20th, 2024. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails and the minutes are approved. The first item on our agenda today is an informational hearing on House File 4757, which is the proposal from the Office of Cannabis Management to modify the state's cannabis laws. We are going to move directly to testimony on the bill, starting with the Office of Cannabis Management. So I'll invite the interim director of the office, Director Briner, to come forward. Welcome to the committee, and you can make your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to join you this morning to walk through the proposals from the Office of Cannabis Management. For the record, my name is Charlene Briner, and I am serving in the interim in the role of interim director of the Office of Cannabis Management. And we are very excited to be here this morning. I also understand you're asking me to be as concise as possible to allow for sufficient time for questions, and so I will do my best to meet that goal. And then I also need to ask for your forgiveness. We are also scheduled to be in the Senate at 10 a.m. this morning, and so if questions go a little longer than anticipated, I am also joined by Max Zappia, who is our Chief Regulatory Officer, and he will take my place to continue with the Q&A. So I want to start by reminding folks of what I've said often. The goal of our legislative recommendations are to strengthen the already robust foundations of Chapter 342 and to build upon the intent of the last year's legislation as developed together by legislators and advocates, many of whom are in the committee this morning. I've spoken often about the primary lenses or goals that we use to develop these recommendations. First among that is to strengthen our ability to ensure a timely and successful cannabis market launch. We also take seriously our regulatory responsibility and want to create a framework to regulate legal cannabis effectively over the long term. Additionally, we want to prioritize health and safety and consumer product awareness, strengthen social equity provisions that are foundational to Minnesota's cannabis law, expand protections for medical cannabis patients and their caregivers to support continuity and access, and we take seriously the charge to learn from other states. And so we want to learn what they have done well and where they may have run into challenges. And so we want to incorporate those learnings, particularly as it relates to legal decisions that have adversely impacted other market launches in other states. To develop these recommendations, OCM has utilized the feedback from public surveys, dozens of engagement opportunities, national research, and from legislators, advocates, and industry experts. Given the complicated nature of this industry and the many lessons that we have already learned from other states, our package represents our best thinking about the way to meet our shared goals for a Minnesota market and to create a timely launch with effective regulation. We're also keenly in tune with the urgency with which we need to stand up this market. And so this package best reflects what we think our ability to accelerate the timeline and have a timely market launch offers. While we also recognize the importance of speed and urgency, we also are committed to prioritizing a safe, effective, and sustainable regulatory approach. You'll see on the slide or in the information in front of you the 7 buckets into which our proposals fall. I'm not going to detail them or read those slides out loud today because I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each one in my subsequent remarks and presentation. So our first bucket, we'd like to improve the application and licensing process. We believe all of the components exist in the actual process itself, But we believe there are opportunities to make sure that we don't experience bottlenecks. We want to reduce financial risk for applicants, and we want to prevent phantom licenses, and by that I mean unused licenses that could take up capacity in the market. Both OCM and our local government partners are critical to a successful application process. Our bill includes several proposals to expedite and streamline the licensing process and the way that applicants interact with OCM and local governments. It also provides a reduction in early financial risk to applicants, particularly social equity applicants, but generally speaking, all applicants, by moving the requirement for premises to be secured at the point of the initial application. This change is a reflection of direct feedback that we've gotten from potential operators, and it clarifies further the order of operations for the application process by making it easier for applicants to understand at each step of the way. It provides information to our local partners about the due diligence that OCM has conducted, and it will prevent bottlenecks and delays in that process. Additionally, our proposal establishes the authority for OCM to revoke a cannabis license if the business has not made good faith efforts to obtain an endorsement. Our second bucket would streamline the cannabis supply chain, establish a medical retail endorsement, and contain costs for adult use consumers, patients, and operators. We recommend this consolidation of the currently separated medical and adult use supply chains into a single supply chain. This comes directly from the lessons we've learned from other states who have attempted to maintain separate and distinct supply chains, and from the need to ensure that operators can successfully operate in both the medical and adult use markets. The fact of the matter is, at the point of cultivation, there is no distinction in the plant between medical and adult use cannabis. The first point in the supply chain where we see any distinction is when manufacturers produce the products, certain specialty products for patients in particular. By removing this distinction at the point of cultivation, we are able to better regulate, to reduce the administrative burden of that regulation, and ensure that operators don't have undue costs that get passed on to both adult use consumers and patients. Because we streamline the medical retail license and substitute it with a new medical retail endorsement for license holders, we create the opportunity for additional access points for medical patients while preserving the existing benefits for medical cannabis patients, including tax exemptions and patient consultations. Our next bucket deals specifically with opportunities to strengthen the already robust social equity provisions that exist in Chapter 342. Chapter 342 is clearly intended to support people who have historically lacked access to capital, to political influence, and access to the levers of power. To help us maximize our ability to meet that legislative intent, we propose a license selection process that utilizes the merit-based application components that already exist in Chapter 342. And we use those components to vet entrants into a lottery. In this industry where there will always be more qualified applicants than available licenses, a well-vetted lottery process is designed to give people who have historically been excluded an equal opportunity into the market as those operators who are well capitalized or politically savvy. To be very clear, OCM will use current law as the parameters for vetting these applicants into the lottery system. I also want to note that we have found no data to suggest that there is any particular business model that will lead to more success than another in this market. So I often use this example. If there are two applicants on the opposite end of the spectrum, one, a business that has been incredibly successful in the legal market in other states, and another who has been successful in the pre-legalized market, both have an opportunity to succeed in Minnesota's new legal market and could be highly successful. However, a subjective point system would likely favor the former business model, and we believe this could lead to inequitable outcomes. Our proposal also creates a social equity license classification to maintain that distinction post-application period and to ensure value in the license type. In addition to the changes I've already outlined, we also make changes in the ownership requirements, bringing them from the 100% that currently exist in Chapter 342 to 65%, because we have learned that access to capital is the single biggest barrier to entry in the market for social equity applicants. This change opens the window for those applicants to pursue capital and financial deals while also protecting the high threshold of ownership that exists in Chapter 342. And then finally, we allow those social equity licensees to freely transfer those licenses after 3 years. Currently in the law, those license holders are only allowed to transfer to other social equity entities, which substantially limits their opportunity to create generational wealth. While definitely intended to protect the license type and classification, there are limits on the ability of those license holders to sell their businesses and create that kind of economic opportunity. And so we took seriously the threshold of 100% and the desire to maintain that high level, and deliberately did not go as low as the 51 to 60% that is traditional in other states. We maintain the high threshold, but we also offer opportunities for that beneficial financing. Our next set of proposals would support our market launch and accelerate it with the issuance of temporary licenses. This proposal creates a mechanism for the Office of Cannabis Management to establish an application process as early as this summer for a limited number of early licenses for those social equity applicants. The language does not allow for plant touching. However, it does offer a substantial early mover advantage to those early licensees, which allows them to establish their business operations and prepare for the adoption of rules. A temporary early license will give the opportunity for these license holders that is critical in preparing their business, including securing capital and gaining the local approvals that they need to operate where they choose. There's also an additional advantage to them and to the entire industry to allow for an arduous application and vetting process to begin sooner than we have rules promulgated, rather than waiting for those rules to be in force, and has further downstream advantages by offering the opportunity to start immediately upon, particularly for those social equity applicants, to be actually operating in the market sooner than other general applicants. This process includes the vetted steps of a lottery, including the SEA verification and the required merit-based application components laid out in Chapter 342. The next set of proposals would accelerate the transition of the hemp enforcement that currently resides at the Department of Health and bring them over to the Office of Cannabis Management in July of 2024. Chapter 342 already accounts for the transition and the entire umbrella of cannabis operations, including medical, hemp-derived cannabinoid enforcement, and adult use under the Office of Cannabis Management. We propose an accelerated transition for the hemp-derived authority to July 1st to allow for earlier integration of our regulatory operations, build our inspection staff, and ensure continuity of operations and consistency of enforcement of regulations. We also propose creating a pathway for current businesses selling hemp-derived products who are registered and in good standing with the state to continue operating those businesses until they're able to obtain a license from OCM in the new licensing structure. There are, at last count, more than 3,800 retailers selling hemp-derived cannabinoid products across the state. They are incredibly successful in many cases, and we don't want to disrupt their ability while they are waiting for us to issue adult use licenses. And so we want to make sure that they can continue to operate, especially given Minnesota is uniquely situated in the cannabis industry in the way that we have made available those products. And then finally, we're working to address the need for continuity in patient access in the current medical program by moving the sunset date to the adoption of rules to minimize disruption. We have a set of proposals to the medical cannabis program that would expand patient protections. It also provides for sustainable access to high-quality, affordable medical products and access to the professionals with expertise in the dosage and use of these products for patients. Our package of proposals for patient protection includes removal of the financial burden for caregivers that currently requires the caregiver to undergo a background check every 2 years at their own expense. We modify the patient supply limits to ensure that patients who have differing medical needs have access to the medicines they depend on. And we establish a certified medical cannabis consultant for new medical retail endorsement holders to ensure patients continue to have access to qualified patient information. Each of these provisions, I think it is extremely important to note, are informed by feedback from the caregiver community and the cannabis registry community that is comprised of both patients and caregivers. And then finally, we have a number of technical revisions that really will help us in our effective oversight and regulation of the cannabis industry. Our proposals would give us the authority to issue product recalls to protect consumer safety, to modify and clarify the background check process. We still want everybody working in the industry to have background checks. We believe it is appropriate for OCM to have the authority to do background checks for license holders and controlling interest partners, and it is appropriate for industry to conduct background checks on their workers and for OCM to maintain assurance that that is happening through monitoring and auditing. OCM will conduct the first background checks for license applicants and license holders, and the BCA, would do the second type of background check. We also outline the high-level offenses that show a history of the exploitation of people or financial systems in order to give statutory direction to our rulemaking authority for any excluding offenses for cannabis license holders. We allow for a research expansion by academic institutions and align the authority of the OCM director with other state agency heads to allow them to make the necessary decisions to ensure high standards of operational efficacy. That brings me to the end. I'm hoping that you have information to inform your questions, and we're happy to take those.
Well, thank you, Director Briner, and I'm looking at the clock. You need to be in the Senate at 10, or you need to leave to get over to the Senate at 10?
I think if we leave at 10, we're okay.
Okay. Then we have,
They're going to give us a little grace. Thank you,
Good.
Mr. Chair.
they should. We'll start with Representative Cagle, or Representative Cleaborn, excuse me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Interim Director, I'd like to thank you for the time that you spent in my office explaining what you're trying to accomplish. And I appreciate your goals and making sure that we have the best system available. I do have a few concerns that have come to me through the different groups who've come through my office in preparation for this meeting. One, there is a concern about what happens when the medical licenses are subject to lottery, and making sure that we truly have supply and capability to meet the needs of both patients and to figure out how that's going to impact applicants going forward. So I'm going to ask you to meet with me later to have a further conversation about that, but I want to put that out in the public space. When you talked about so the other things that have been brought to my attention are things about rulemaking, and so many other states have very good rules already in place. Are we starting from scratch in Minnesota, or are we going to use those other rulemaking procedures to inform us and guide us and to expedite our process? Maybe you could just answer that one, but I'll ask my last thing, and then you can do it as a whole. The other question that has been put to me, and I think it is a legitimate concern, if there is no plant, well, there are two pieces. If there is no plant touching, how do we make sure that we have crops in the ground now so that when the businesses are allowed to operate, they actually have product? So that's a concern that people have. And then, the last thing I just lost in my mind.
Why don't we let Director Briner answer
Thank
the
you.
first question, then you can think of it and we'll come back. Director Briner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, for all of those excellent questions. And I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you in the future to discuss continuity for medical patients. That is something that we are deeply concerned about. We've had very productive conversations with the chair about how we can ensure that together, because that is a priority. In terms of the lottery itself, I think that your question was specifically about how. Could you just repeat specifically the question about the lottery?
Representative Cleaborn.
Well, the question that we have is, how do we make sure that when the concern was about straw applicants, right? So how do we ensure that, let's say, Large Co. isn't coming in and flooding the applicant pool for the lottery so that one of their applicants may or may not get through?
Director Briner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, for that clarification. So, first of all, there is a threshold to entry into the market that demonstrates an applicant's ability and seriousness. We don't propose a blind lottery that just, if you have a Social Security number, that you have entrance. First, and in particular for social equity, but for all applicants, there will be a vetted process. There's the determination of social equity status, and then for all applicants, using the criteria laid out in Chapter 342, that is very specific and robust. Once that is complete, entrance into the lottery is granted. We already contemplate in 342 that there may be more applicants than licenses available, and so there is a mechanism that exists in 342 already for a lottery. We want to be very clear that we are going to vet for viability prior to entrance in the lottery.
Thank you.
Chair Cleaborn.
Yeah, and then the other question that was brought to me by multiple people was this whole idea of social equity status, right? The individuals who believe that they would qualify for social equity status would like to be able to be vetted very quickly and very early so that they can get the capital, so they can prove viability, right? So I just want to bring that to your attention as well. They're hanging out there waiting and waiting, and they need to be able to fundraise now. So if there's some way to speed up that process so they know whether they qualify or not, I think that would be helpful to them going forward.
Director Briner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, that's exactly what we propose with the early licenses. So the first step is the actual verification. We would anticipate, if the legislature makes moves toward that mechanism, that we would be providing guidance by late spring so that when that window opens for verification, hopefully in July, that we'll be ready to go. That process of verification happens relatively quickly, and then the next step of vetting prior to lottery would occur. So we are hoping to have informational materials and guidance if it looks like the legislature will be moving in this direction as soon as late spring.
Thank you.
Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so one of my questions is about the demonstration of viability in the market. And so from my understanding, what that means is, they have to actually kind of, put some skin in the game. So what happens to that capital that people have invested in getting their, their business up and running and invested in that application and licensing process if they're not selected in the lottery?
Director Briner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you for that question. That's exactly why we're proposing doing it the way that we are. So one of the things that we are removing is the requirement to secure your building through either a mortgage or a lease prior to an assurance of having a license. That is a significant financial risk, and we've seen in other states that people, if there are challenges that slow down licensing, they've drained their life savings, their 401ks, their, the capital that they've secured from other places while waiting for the process to move forward. And so by removing that requirement on the front end and then giving the assurance that you have a license, which for lack of a better term is sort of the ticket to entry to capital, it mitigates that risk for those operators.
Representative Cagle?
Thank you. And then one of my concerns too is what Chair Cleburne was saying was that, we need plants growing now if we want to have retailers open when we plan to. And so is there a way to start those rolling licenses so we can get people cultivating?
Director Briner?
Mr. Chair, Representative Cagle, we're thinking we're trying to give a lot of thought to how we stage, because we also know that this is a sort of a delicate dance. We don't want to start cultivation so early that we don't have retailers open who can sell that supply and have it sitting there unused, right, for diversion or spoilage. And we also do know that is a challenge to make sure we have sufficient supply for retailers to sell when they open their doors. So thinking about what that would look like in a staging process is part of our ongoing conversation.
Representative Cagle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When will rulemaking be done?
Director Briner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, we are working under expedited rulemaking authority. There are, I believe, 46 separate references to rulemaking in the law. It is a robust endeavor, and the Administrative Procedures Act, while giving us the ability to move quickly, also didn't necessarily contemplate the lack of rule writing capacity in the state. So we're leveraging ourselves of every resource we have available, including the expertise of other agencies. We are also hiring additional capacity at OCM to expedite that. We hope to have the package of rules available for preliminary review by this summer, and we'll be sharing those. We also are working closely with the reviser and the administrative law offices to make sure that they are prepared when we send this robust package over. I think that our goal has always been to have those rules enforced by early 2025, and if there is any way to expedite that, we will do that.
Okay, and I think at that is 10 o'clock on the nose. So I think we will let Director Briner head over to the other body, and we will move on to testimony on the bill. We will have opportunities for members to ask questions after we take public testimony. So thank you, Director Briner, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Chair Stephenson. We really appreciate the opportunity, and we continue to appreciate working closely with you and every member in this committee. Thank you.
So we'll start up with public testimony, but I do want to give both the committee and the public kind of roadmap for where we're going on cannabis. We are going to take public testimony on the OCM's bill today. We'll have a chance after that for members to ask questions if they want. We will take no action on OCM's bill today. On Monday, we have noticed several bills relating to cannabis for hearings, so we will hear those bills on Monday, take testimony, consider amendments. On Wednesday, we will take up a cannabis omnibus bill, take testimony, consider amendments, and vote the bill out of the Commerce Committee on Wednesday. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Just the kind of parliamentary inquiry. Will there be representatives from the Office of Cannabis Management here on both Monday and Tuesday to answer member questions? I saw them walk out, and I was trying to maybe catch up before they walked out, so that we can take those amendments and questions that come up with that, as well as the omnibus bill, because we have had others who have jurisdiction that falls in this committee to have them present, and that might be helpful as well. Question.
Yeah, I appreciate you flagging that. I looked back in the back of the room at Director Briner, and she nodded and gave me a thumbs up. So we will have OCM here on Monday and Wednesday of next week. Okay, with that, we're going to move to testimony. I'm going to call up two people at a time, so you can come up, and then we'll go one at a time, but we'll just try to keep things moving. We're going to restrict testimony to 2 minutes per person. We have a lot of work ahead of us today after we get through this, so I appreciate everyone's cooperation with that. Our first testifier is John Barty, who will be followed by Jeff Taylor. So if Mr. Barty and Mr. Taylor both could come down, that would be wonderful. And Mr. Barty, if you could state your name for the record, proceed your testimony. Welcome back to the Commerce Committee.
Hello, I'm John Barty. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members, and thank you to Director Briner. She was great. I am the president of the Cannabis Retailers and Manufacturers Association of Minnesota. We're a member-driven organization of small and medium-sized operators throughout the state. Over the past 2 weeks, we've engaged in member stakeholder meetings surrounding these proposals, doing our best to explain the proposals and their impacts that they'll have to current and prospective business owners, understanding the good faith behind the proposals. Many of the businesses have already begun preparing for a transition into the adult use market, and member feedback showed that the community and OCM are aligned on building this industry in a way that leads the nation. However, the proposed lottery licensing system is a cause for alarm amongst our members who have worked for the past 10 months to prepare for a merit-based scoring system. They fear large organizations will simply get more tickets to play, and we believe that with these proposals, along with amendments led by the community, we can finish what we've started with the cannabis industry. We ask legislators, regulators, and OCM leadership to continue engaging with the community that has built Minnesota's cannabis industry since 2018, and to consider the hours and hours of engagement and feedback that went into the merit-based system. CRMA overwhelmingly approves of OCM's intent to speed up the licensing process, but we believe that the current law allows for OCM to complete rulemaking and the licensing process quickly. If there is a hang-up, we think we could focus and fix that issue. We're always open to discussion, and thank you guys again.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Taylor, who will be followed by Nathan Young. So, Mr. Young, if you want to come down, sit where Mr. Barty is now. And go ahead, Mr. Taylor. State your name for the record. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Taylor. I'm partners with Beeswax. We're a manufacturer and distributor here in town currently. And actually, a few of the questions I have, I love your guys' questions because I have the same questions, okay? And some of the things that we've dealt with over the last couple of years is really tough on some of us out there in the industry currently. Cultivation, for an example, like you asked, I don't know if everybody understands how long cultivation is. I think people think you just put a seed in the ground and you have a plant in 3 months. That's not how it's going to actually work. And so I'm here to just kind of educate people on how long it really takes if you want to open a facility. If you say, Jeff, you have a license right now today, go. You realize that to go buy a building, that's 4 or 5 months. I was in real estate for a long time. That's 4 to 5 months to close on a commercial building. So we're 4 or 5 months down the road. Then to build that facility out, it's going to take probably another 5 to 6 months if you do it the right way. So now we're 10, 12 months almost down the road. You put a seed in the ground, it takes 3 months to actually have a plant come up that we could sell flower. Now, if you want to do a lot of other things that is really done in the dispensary industry, you're probably at 4 or 5 months. So we're a minimum of 12 months if you say go right now. And all we've heard is it's going to open at the end of the year. It's going to open in the spring. We're going to do this in the summer. We're going to do this late spring. We're out there a lot further than I think we think if we don't give some temporary licenses out there. And I'm not saying that's me or who that is, but we need to start moving this down the path and getting some licenses into cultivation. The other thing is, our facility down there, I think there's a lot of people that, again, don't understand and are making some of these rules and laws, and they don't understand everything about it. I welcome all of you guys down to my facility. I've had probably a dozen of the people from the house over there that have come down and seen my facility, seen how a gummy's made, seen how some of the processes are. And again, I welcome all you guys down there. Another thing with, the flower that's going on in the market right now, we're now going to start pulling that away from stores. Maybe we need to start giving some temporary licenses to some stores out there that are doing that also, because that's the most natural form of the plant. It's okay to sell a gummy, which is not natural, but we can't sell a flower. And they're starting to pull that off shelves. So that's what the public wants, and we're here to help the public. We serve the public, and so if we ask around, these are some of the things that need to be answered again. And I just want to say thank you, and you're welcome to come out to our facility anytime. I have an open door with the state. The Department of Health's been out there multiple times, and they're doing a hard job right now. My hat's off to them. So
Thank you for your testimony.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
You guys have a great day.
Next, we have Nathan Young, who will be followed by Maren Schroeder. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nathan Young, and I'm the Cannabis Policy Lead for the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to present testimony representing the MBCC's strong opposition to House File 4757. At the core of our opposition is the switch from a merit-based system to a lottery. Lotteries do not put social equity applicants on even footing with other competitors. In fact, lotteries make it much more unfair. In every instance, when a state has used the lottery to distribute cannabis social equity licenses, black applicants in particular have fallen victim to predatory deals made by big businesses seeking straw applicants. Businesses seeking a way to rig the system in their favor create dozens of opaque LLCs and pay vulnerable members of our community to use their name and details as owners of those businesses. These owners have no operational control over their business, and 1 year after the license is granted, a term in their contract forces them to sell their shares to the predatory investor, effectively stripping them of their license and livelihood for pennies on the dollar. This is not only unfair for the unassuming black entrepreneurs who fall victim to the scheme, it is deeply unfair to the numerous black entrepreneurs, many of whom are working on their business plans right now, who will end up being cheated by a big business who cheated their way in. And that's why every social equity expert, not just me, every social equity expert who's ever been asked a question on lotteries versus merit-based systems, including the NAACP, the Minority Cannabis Business Association, the Washington State Commission on African American Affairs, the Los Angeles County Commission on Social Equity, and the Coalition for African American Talent in Cannabis all strongly oppose lotteries. Minnesotans deserve an adult use cannabis market that is served by real people who actually care about the communities that they're in. Minnesotans deserve a fair chance to participate in that market and not a rigged system that is pay to win. We understand that after several delays that this state would like to fast-track adult use cannabis licensing, but we cannot prioritize speed over doing the right thing. We hope that you will help us stop this critically flawed legislation and work with us to protect Black and Brown community members from harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Maren Schroeder, who will be followed by Angela Dawson. Ms. Schroeder.
Thank you, Chair Stephenson and members of the committee. My name is Maren Schroeder, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Sensible Change Minnesota, a patient and consumer-led advocacy nonprofit. We have reviewed this legislation in detail and just want to address a few items. First, there is little clarity as to what will happen to the existing medical cannabis manufacturers under the lottery proposal as mentioned by Representative Cleavorn. It is our understanding that the lottery will apply to the medical cannabis combination license in which the two existing companies may apply to enter. However, there is no assurance that the existing infrastructure will be licensed and that numerous large companies won't come into Minnesota using that license type. While for years we have advocated for a competitive marketplace for patients, we never envisioned one dominated by several large operators under this license type and do not want to see patients pitted against small businesses over this issue. The merit-based system currently in statute would likely advance the two medical cannabis manufacturers as they have history of operations in Minnesota and an infrastructure critical to the supply of medical cannabis. With a lottery, patients are left facing uncertainty about the market, especially if licensed applicants are simply submitting documents ahead of actually preparing for business. Further, the proposed changes from a merit-based system to a lottery and the removal of prioritizing applicants who will serve the medical cannabis market puts into question the quality, pricing, and access to medical cannabis products throughout the state. We are pleased to see the unification of supply chains in the proposal. This will help to reduce cost bottlenecks and provide ample choices for patients. The addition of certified medical cannabis consultants will make it easier and more achievable for retailers to offer medical cannabis products to registered patients. We urge you to also consider allowing for remote approvals of purchases in addition to the consultations. It will vastly expand options for patients if retailers of all sizes can cost-effectively make medical cannabis an integrative part of their business plans. Finally, the sooner this work focuses on opening up the market, the better served patients are. With the combination of a lottery, unification of the supply chain, and removing prioritization for licenses that will serve medical cannabis patients, we are fearful that medical cannabis patients will continue to suffer the consequences of politics, something we have done for the past decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Next, we have Angela Dawson, who will be followed by John Hyduk. Ms. Dawson, welcome back to the committee.
Good morning, Chair Stephenson. Thank you, committee. My name is Angela Dawson. I'm the president of 40 Acre Cooperative, the first agricultural cooperative in this region that focuses on supporting underrepresented farmers, especially Black and Indigenous farmers across the region. I'm also the co-founder of the Great Rise, which has been providing a lot of the conversations in rural communities across the state around this important issue around access to cannabis, both as an economic and agricultural development resource in our communities. This has been a very important issue for us to discuss, especially as farmers. I'm also honored to represent farmers on the Governor's Cannabis Advisory Council. My comments are being made today as a multi-generational farmer with previous experience as a medical cannabis cultivator in other states, and also as a legal hemp licensee farmer for the past 3 years in the state of Minnesota. With my time, I'd like to focus specifically on two issues that bring us the greatest concern, and that is first the temporary licensing section 37, especially around 37.2 to 37.5. This area does speak specifically about cultivators, and it prohibits cultivators from cultivating, which seems counterintuitive to me, especially if we're looking at standing up an industry in 2025. To be put plainly, if cultivators are not allowed to cultivate until a year from now, that means that there won't be an industry until 2026. In the meantime, the illicit market will continue to proliferate, and only those with large corporate interests are allowed to benefit. And for us, especially social equity applicants and farmers will continue to hold the bag or carry the water as other but not generate revenue as other folks are allowed to generate the revenue. I just want the committee to be aware of the conundrum that this is creating for farmers, especially who are trying to stay in compliance with these laws and also stay solvent as viable business owners and be prepared to be participants in the legal industry. The interim director, Briner, I heard her mention the issue of diversion and spoilage, and I feel like we already have a framework to prevent this with the medical and hemp programs, and I'd be happy to work with the OCM and others in order to make sure this is stood up in a proper, safe, and efficient way. My last comment is I share concerns with others about the lottery process. I feel like the delay serves to be more harmful than helpful in the industry, and I stand ready to work with others to make sure this is successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Hyduk, who will be followed by Aaron Wallach. Mr. Hyduk.
Great, Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you for having me here today. I am a lifelong resident of Minnesota, growing up in Hibbing, raising my family in Duluth, currently living at Eden Prairie, and operate a business in the North Loop. I am also a partner in the Cannabis project called Highway 35 with a proposed cultivation and manufacturing business located in Grand Rapids. I'm also board chair and organizer of the Minnesota Marijuana Association. The MMA was organized to build a coalition of like-minded enthusiasts from both across and outside the state, including all groups of size, both social equity and commercial, using the cornerstone legislation in 2023 as the guiding North Star to prepare and get ready to stand up this newest industry. We need to do this safely, with stability, and with certainty, and we believe the merit-based system in the legislation of 2023 is the way to do that. The Highway 35 project is to provide an economic boost and stability to a region I grew up in and vowed to help with job creation one day. The day has come, and that's with the new cannabis legalized industry. The ability to partner with experience was critical to the business plan, which calls for social equity partnering to ensure the intent of the legislation is carried out better and more successful than any other state in the country. So with that being said, in favor of merit-based, not lottery. We need operators ready to operationalize a license and prevent gamemanship. Merit is the legislation that all of these folks, all of our members, have been preparing for some time. And resources, with their resources, and are ready to stand up the industry. Lottery is a game of chance and doesn't provide that stability and certainty that we need here in the state of Minnesota. as what has been mentioned, standing up cultivation will be a challenge. We do have the smallest existing cannabis industry of any state. We need operators that are ready to go, both social equity and commercial, to jumpstart the industry in a timely fashion. Our governor has stated timeliness is critical, and we agree with that. Litigation will come, but it doesn't have to interfere with the standing up of the industry.
And I'm going to need you to wrap up your comments now.
Okay, sounds good. Lotteries are vulnerable to litigation as well, and the downsides associated with the lotteries vastly outweigh any perceived advantage that they have, like exposure to litigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Aaron Wallach, who will be followed by Jeff Brinkman. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to address the committee today. My name is Erin Wallach. I am the co-founder of CannaJoy MN. We're a mom and pop shop in South Minneapolis, living our dream of owning and operating a small cannabis store, serving home growers with premium cannabis strains and consumers with compliant Minnesota-made hemp-derived products. We like to think we meet people where they're at on their seed and weed journey. I've come here today to request that you please continue to keep small businesses like ours in mind as rulemaking and legislations are being considered. We're a small store with big dreams and a tough industry, but I think for us as a small independent retailer, our main message is to not forget about the small businesses like ours, especially in the merit-based versus lottery approach. What's really special about the cannabis industry is how it crosses so many traditional divides. Every day we get to honor and serve adults of all ages, all backgrounds, all professions, veterans and former first responders, as well as medical patients with many conditions who are simply looking for relief with cannabis. And this really matters to people. We get the opportunity to chat daily about how much life has changed for the positive now that now that it is legal in Minnesota, and home growers especially are very excited to be growing their own cannabis. We want to look at the craft cannabis and building that from the laws that have been created and put in place, and to keep that in mind as we move forward. In conclusion, the speed at which licenses are given out and looking at a merit-based versus a lottery are really important and going to help with the rollout of all of this, especially for the small businesses. The longer we drag our heels, the harder it will be for everyone to be successful in 2025 and beyond. Monopolies are bad. And thank you all for listening and for being here and all that you do.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Jeff Brinkman, who will be followed by Layli Fatehi.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Brinkman, cannabis activist, and I'm here to remind you folks of the promises made regarding cannabis legalization. Last year, legislative authors sold the people of Minnesota on a small business, craft, and equity-focused bill touted as a model for the nation. Currently, the bill, including this one, notably deviate from that promise. We've learned a lot in 2024. We discovered that the first OCM director was required to make her introductory phone calls to lobbying strategists over anyone else. I know this because I reached out to Ms. Dupree, who confirmed that her first call on a list of 222 people was to a lobbying strategist, sitting right to the left of me. Following that call, the strategist initiated a campaign to have Ms. Dupree removed, and she resigned within 24 hours. There are serious questions about why our governor-appointed director was required to make her first contacts with lobbying strategists.
Mr. Brinkman, this hearing is about the bill that's before the committee. If you'd like to comment to that, I'd encourage you to do so and not make reference to other testifiers. Thank you.
We learned that medical and other corporate players are planning massive expansions in anticipation of the race to the bottom of their cost per gram. They mentioned canopies exceeding 250,000 square feet at a single location in news articles. How does that affect equity stakeholders, small businesses, and small farms? How can these companies spend millions, some with state money, on the construction of huge facilities without knowing whether they will obtain a license? It seems they have already solidified their positions with lobbyists and legislators. Once again, equity stakeholders, small businesses, and farms are being sidelined, while big businesses and corporate interests expect to thrive due to their close relationships with legislators and lobbyists. This is unfortunate, and it's a reality in Minnesota right now. but I'm hopeful for change, and I'm willing to help in any way I can. Please remember, your constituents are people and not corporations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Layli Fatehi, who will be followed by Hollis Winston. Ms. Fatehi.
Chair and members, my name is Layli Fatehi, and I serve as the director of the Minnesota Cannabis Resource Center. Our mission is to advance a safe, equitable, and thriving cannabis industry in Minnesota. Built on the footprint of the MN is Ready Coalition, we champion the principles that guided Minnesota's cannabis legislation. Last session, through an unparalleled collaboration between our legislators and local cannabis policy stakeholders, we created what is now known nationwide as the Minnesota model, the most innovative legislation enacted anywhere since Colorado first legalized over a decade ago. The Minnesota model is a testament to our collective vision of fostering an equitable, inclusive, and locally beneficial cannabis industry. It prioritizes Minnesota businesses in building a craft cannabis economy that benefits our local communities. Another hallmark of it is the hemp-derived THC product market that we invented in 2021, which is an invaluable on-ramp for small businesses to establish their presence and build capital en route to the adult use market. But we're at a critical juncture at the cusp of realizing the full potential of the Minnesota model. There are large, moneyed, out-of-state interests that are betting on our failure. They see our success as a barrier to their market entry, and they're working hard to influence our licensing process, aiming to complicate and escalate the cost of application preparation in order to sideline our small local businesses. They thrive on introducing subjectivity wherever possible, hoping to game our system and mire our process in litigation and delay. So as we delve into the complexities of this bill, particularly around considerations of lottery versus merit-based licensing and questions of license caps, we should be reminded that these are not just procedural details. They are the battleground on which the future of the Minnesota model will be decided. And it's imperative that our solutions remain true to the principles that underpin our model and are guided by the insights and needs of our local industry stakeholders. We're the architects of a hemp-derived revolution that set a precedent across the country. Our innovative law didn't materialize in a vacuum. It was born from a shared commitment to social equity, community welfare, and local empowerment. And as we navigate these challenges with this legislation, we should be betting on the same spirit of collaboration that brought our model to life in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Hollis Winston, who will be followed by Fatima Moore. Mayor Winston, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, committee, and to Chair Stephenson. I just want to say that I'm not here in my capacity as mayor. I've actually recused myself from votes in my city hall along those lines. So I just want to speak quickly to the Coalition for Equity, which is who I am here in that capacity as, and we were asked to get involved because this is a major opportunity, which I haven't heard this discussed much, but to really affect some of the disparities that we see in Minnesota, whether it's along employment, whether it's along wealth, whether it's along business ownership. We've been working with organizations like Create C and other folks that are going to be coming up here. I think one of the issues that we see with the bill as proposed is it really disincentivizes folks from getting involved. So if you have a lottery, and it's a couple $100,000 to simply get involved up front for the application to get the right consultants on board, that incentivizes you from getting involved. I also think it does encourage straw applicants, which if you look at the disincentivization and then you look at the straw applicants, you're really affecting the opposite of what you want to do if you are going to live up to undoing some of the harm done from the war on drugs and addressing those disparities. I think also when you talk about that lottery quickly, you're actually doing the opposite of equity. So if you have issues that lead people to have to deal with discrimination and have biased decision-making so that the right people can't actually get these applications, simply putting a lottery in place and leaving it to chance does not deal with the underlying issues. It puts it in someone else's hands, and we're asking for a fair shake when it comes to that. It also moves the goalpost for communities of color who have been really building up to this, and now you're saying it's not in your hands any longer. So, you know, I'm very much advocating for a point system That keeps it fair. People know what to actually aim for. And then for the temporary licenses, I do think that will assist with the flow of capital. I will say this, I think the OCM has an opportunity to get this right. And when we talk about disparities, when we talk about the intent of the governor, it can go a couple ways. What it looks like we're headed to is, at minimum, creating a situation where there is no change in the disparities. At worst, you stand up a very new industry, and you actually exacerbate those disparities because you are creating a new industry that puts more wealth in the hands of folks who are not affected by this, right? And then you push other people out. So it's an opportunity to get it right, but the bill as proposed does not seem to be moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tommy. So I asked for Fatima Moore. I think I am Tommy
speaking on behalf
Beavis.
of Fatima Moore.
Okay,
I am
so
Tommy.
you're Tommy Beavis, is that
Yes, I am.
correct? So we'll have Tommy Beavis, will be followed by Rashad Iman.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members, for having us provide these testimonies. I am speaking on behalf of Create C, which is a coalition the mayor just spoke about, but I'm also speaking as a business owner, the person who runs Pimento Jamaican Kitchen, award-winning Pimento Jamaican Kitchen, but we also have, but I'm also speaking through, because Pimento is more than a restaurant. We've created Pimento Relief Services, which came out of the 2020 uprisings, and our job is to focus on those, providing resources to those on the front lines of economic liberation, social liberation, and political liberation. And this matter falls squarely in the center of social liberation because it's talking about reparative justice. Economic liberation is providing opportunities for those who've traditionally been left behind. And then political liberation, because this is now the opportunity for us to get it right with restorative justice. In terms of the lottery, I'm here to speak against the lottery because, of course, it does a major disservice to our community. There's no social equity component to it. It is more of an invisible hand picking winners and losers. It continues to move that goalpost that people of color have been calling out for so many generations. And so this is one of the things that I'm afraid of is through the lottery, we select some businesses, then those businesses fail. And then the argument is there goes another black business that fails, while it was a black business that was ready to be in that space. So far with my work, we've already been working on branding. We already had our site URL. We're doing site selection. We have consultants on board. And as some folks have raised in this committee, it's so what happens with all that investment after if one isn't chosen in the lottery. And so either we stop dead in the water right now, or we continue to invest some cost in this and then lose all of that investment. And of course, no investor wants to come on board with a business that is relying on a lottery system. And then finally, my recommendation would be for us to maintain the point system, maintain the merit-based system. We talk about removing affirmative action and focus on merit-based. This is our opportunity to use merit-based decision-making. And then additionally, we want to have funds made available through DEED to help support and stand up social equity organizations. Hennepin County have done similar things where they've made resources available to us, and we're calling on you to help make this right. This is an opportunity for restorative justice. And I thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Rashad Iman, who will be followed by Calandra Evering. Mr. Iman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for having me here. I'm a business owner as well, and I represent the Collective for Racial Equity and African American Talent in Cannabis. That's Create C. These are about 14 or so black and brown individuals who collectively have gotten together and decided, hey, we want to take advantage and build opportunities, specifically jobs, for black and brown people who've been the most affected in terms of the war on drugs, if you will, and create jobs and opportunities for those individuals who's been affected in that capacity. Just here today, we're working to work on a mezzo license, if you will, so we want to cultivate to retail and whatnot, which in that essence takes a lot of work. And one of the most difficult things with black and brown people in that regard is access to capital. And just having these different conversations with organizations and people and trying to build up this equity and whatnot, working and putting all this effort, and then all of a sudden someone says, well, we're going to roll the dice, and all the effort that you've done may or may not be good enough. You know, it kind of illustrates a consistency in terms of every time we try to get together and try to build, take a part and be a part of an industry, someone always moves the goalpost. And we're just trying to stand up and show that that's not something that we're trying to push forward. We're really looking at merit-based because we're working together, and it's just hard just to pull together those efforts in the first place, but we're working together to kind of push that effort. So some of the things that we're looking for is to just get the need to release the funds from the deed now to help further that in terms of building up capital and pushing towards that effort. But we are definitely not looking at rolling the dice again with this lottery. We are working on merit-based because we are working extremely hard to really push our efforts forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Calandra Revering, who will be followed by Sean Tatral.
Good morning. I am the owner of a dispensary. I'm the founder of Minnesota Association for Black Cannabis Professionals. I'm also a member of the Defense Bar. As an advocate of justice for this entire community, I no longer trust or have confidence in the OCM or their process to create any policies to advance the interests of social equity applicants. I oppose the lottery system. With this new proposal, the OCM has created a path for multi-state operators to come in and expand their footprint in Minnesota. Partnering with social equity applicants is not the best option for Minnesota. Even if the applicant owns 50% of the company. What rules the day is the operating agreement. What we have seen in other states is that in this operating agreement, many social applicants will not even receive a payout until the company achieves a certain amount of revenue. As one of my colleagues informed me, who has opened cannabis operations in other states, this is called rent a minority, and it is on its way to Minnesota thanks to the OCM's proposal. There are no landlords in this state who are willing to hold their property for months until the applicant receives the license. Because what the OCM is proposing is that during this temporary period, no sales can happen and no growth can happen. It brings us back to square one, money. As an attorney who often speaks on social equity issues, I have always said and always promoted that this bill was written for Minnesotans by Minnesotans. I no longer feel that way, ladies and gentlemen. The lottery system proposed by the OCM feels like the true Minnesota that many people always say and what we try to get away from, the Minnesota nice, which is smiling in your face while shutting you out of opportunities for your own benefit. I don't know what the benefit is here with this proposal, but it's not for Minnesotans. What I implore you to do, and what I implore you to direct the OCM to do, is to improve the merit system by working with community stakeholders, releasing grant funding, and doing what's best for this community. And in doing so, you will reduce the likelihood of me and my colleagues in burdening this community in litigation. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Sean Tatral. Mr. Tatral.
Good morning. My name is Sean Tatro. I represent King Kind Cultivation. I'm here today to voice opposition to the proposed lottery in favor of a merit-based application process. Current data proves neither are insulated from potential litigation. Information does, however, indicate that a merit-based system creates a more robust and sustainable cannabis market. Minnesota has an opportunity to avoid the pitfalls that have plagued other states. Many aspects of this process require prudent consideration, particularly as it pertains to social equity status, application eligibility thresholds, and the sequential distribution of temporary licensing. Temporary licensing may be limited to social equity applicants. Therefore, a logical first step would be a process to qualify social equity status. Beyond the implementation of a merit-based system, reasonably high standards for application eligibility should exist for several reasons. It limits the amount of applicants to allow for a more thorough review. It protects small Minnesota entrepreneurs and the public, and awards licensing to the most qualified applicants with the shortest path to becoming operational. Cultivators provide the supply for the supply chain. All other sectors require this supply to operate. cannabis entrepreneurs are doomed to fail in the absence of a steady and abundant supply chain. Establishing a protocol that grants temporary licensing based on the timeline required to become operational is crucial. Each sector has different lead times required to become operational. This is critical for businesses with a small runway for operations. Coordinating the sequential disbursement of temporary licenses to allow for all or most sectors to become operational simultaneously is imperative, because no one can operate correctly unless everyone is operating correctly. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the testimony that we had of people who signed up. We'll now just turn to member discussion and questions if there are any, knowing that we will be taking this matter up again on Wednesday. Is there any discussion or questions that people want to do now? Representative New Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one quick comment. I've been really interested in the testimony, and frankly, I'll be honest with you, we deal with a lot here at the legislature. This isn't something that I'm spending all of my time paying attention to. But what's interesting to me, we've heard a lot about the lottery, and I have had, in fact, I've talked to my EDA director as well as multiple potential cultivators in my district, folks who are looking to become cultivators, and they're really struggling with the fact, and frankly, my EDA director is struggling with the fact that maybe I need to be careful about saying too much, but there are multiple organizations looking to come in. They would qualify for as equity applicants, but one of them is very clearly ready to hit the road, right? Like one of them very clearly has a very fleshed out business plan, has all their ducks in a row, are ready to go, whereas the others are significantly far behind. And so when we're looking at a strict lottery policy, probably all of them will meet the minimum requirements to be in the lottery, and yet there's one that is clearly ready to go, whereas the others probably are not. It really is probably something we need to consider and look at in how this is going to function. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Oh, Representative Cleaborn, sorry.
No, I'm just asking for clarification. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, the last comment, that they're ready to go? I'm not, because I don't have the background, so I'm asking, are you arguing that the lottery is an issue or a non-issue?
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the way the lottery is set up is potentially problematic, because there are folks that can win this lottery who are not ready to go, whereas there are other folks who don't have any higher standing in that lottery, but are much more prepared to actually start a business, and they're ready to go.
Thank you for the clarification. That's all.
Representative Katiza,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think that, based on the testimony that we've heard, I think that this is something that definitely warrants some additional consideration. One of my experience with lotteries in the past is the kindergarten lottery in Eden Prairie School District. We only have one Spanish immersion school. Everyone who wants to apply does get to apply, but in the lottery, you get basically extra entries for certain issues or conditions. And so I wonder if that's something that would be worth considering, kind of a combination of the merit-based system, but people potentially get an extra entry into the lottery based on how they've achieved some of the other measurements.
I'm sure it will be a topic we will continue to discuss. It clearly is the most in focus piece of the legislation that people are focusing on. So we'll be talking a lot more about that. Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, Mr. Chair, just an observation. It's going to be a lot more exciting than the stuff we're about to take up as we continue on with our agenda.
Just through the heart.
Yeah, no kidding. Ouch. Ouch. Well, with that, I think we'll make a transition. If you are here solely on the cannabis bill, we're done with that for today. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to depart. If you depart, please do so quietly. We'll move now to the omnibus bill.
As Mr. Chair approaches the testifiers table, next on the agenda, members, is House File 4077. And Chair Stephenson, you can make your motion when you're ready.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I will move House File 4077 be placed on the general register.
All right. Chair Stevenson moves that House File 4077 be placed on the general register.
Madam Chair, I also move the DE2 amendment.
Chair Stevenson moves the DE2 amendment. So Chair Stevenson, you'd like to present as with the DE2 and...
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, the DE2 amendment takes the Commerce Technical Bill, which is the underlying House File 477, and turns it into the Commerce Policy Omnibus, which consists of bills that this committee has been working on so far this session. I'm not going to go through them line by line. We've heard the bills that are in the Omnibus Bill in committee and taken testimony, and there are some alterations and things that I'm sure we'll get to when we get to amendments. But I'm very pleased to bring this package before the committee. I'm very thankful for the hard work that members on both sides have done on the bills so far. I think it's a good package, and I'm looking forward to the discussion and debate today. And so with that, Madam Chair, I think moving to testifiers would be appropriate.
All right. First on the list, we have Peter Brickwitty from the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
Madam Chair, just a clarification on the DE2 procedural for the bill author, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. And as Mr. Brickwitty's making his way down, that's fine as well. Mr. Chair, and to the bill author, you had asked us to go to the general register, and that's because there's no finance in here. And I'm just wondering if you are aware if there are going to be finance targets that are going to happen. And number two, will this committee be getting one? And if so, will we be having a separate finance bill, or are we going to end up bringing this back from the general register, amending this with finance, and then putting it to Ways and Means and back to the general register? Just looking what a glide path might look like in the future if there are targets, which I don't think they're going to be, but I'm not sure because we don't have any money.
Chair Stevenson.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, well, quarrel with the very last statement about not having any money. The state is in a very significant surplus, is in a healthy financial situation. To answer your procedural questions, this bill will not become a finance bill regardless of whether we get a target. This bill will be a policy omnibus, and it will stay a policy omnibus. It will leave the committee. I do not intend for it to come back. If we get a target, I would expect to produce a different budget bill at third deadline, but that would be a different bill at that time.
All right. So I'm not seeing Mr. Brickwitty coming down quite yet. Shall we move on to the following testifiers, and then we can circle back when he is able to join us. So first, we have Mike Bradley. You can introduce yourself for the record and begin your testimony. Oh, yeah. And as a reminder for everyone, we are timing testimony to 2 minutes as we have a lot to cover today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members. My name is Michael Bradley. I'm a partner with the law firm of Bradley Werner. I want to thank Representative Stephenson, Representative Freiberg, for their leadership in bringing forward this policy bill. I'm specifically speaking on House File 4077, Article 4, Sections 1 through 11. That is the broadband franchising bill, also known as the Equal Access to Broadband Act. We are in support of the A8 amendment. That amendment does 4 things. The first is it expressly excludes wireless providers and satellite providers.
Mr. Bradley, if you could speak just a little bit closer to the microphone. Some of us are having trouble hearing you. Thank you.
You bet. It accomplishes, the A8 accomplishes 4 things. First, it expressly excludes satellite and wireless providers. Secondly, it avoids the stacking issue that was raised previously in testimony by clearly identifying that there is one franchising authority, and it's a city. Thirdly, it addresses the franchise fee cap issue. It expressly puts in a franchise fee cap that essentially mirrors the franchise fees or fees that cable operators pay today. And lastly, it prohibits any fees that are inconsistent with the Federal Cable Act. So we support the A8 amendment to Article 4. I did want to also mention the benefits of franchising. It's important to recognize that local governments are the franchising authorities right now for cable, and the things that they do are things that no other entity in Minnesota is doing. I want to give 3 examples, if I may. First is making sure that all areas of their cities are equitably built out. And that is something that I talked about in my testimony before this committee before. But secondly, there's been 2 proceedings at the FCC just very recently. One is making sure that digital discrimination rules were put into place. Minnesota cities, as franchising authorities, were the only entities in Minnesota that were standing up for subscribers.
You just wrap up really quickly.
And then the last one is making sure that that there's all-in cable pricing. And so only cities stood up for subscribers to make sure that those kinds of rules were adopted. Those were adopted just this week. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. We have Assistant Commissioner Peter Brickwitty to join us from the Commerce Department now. Next will be Shannon Slatton. Mr. Brickwitty, introduce yourself. Proceed with your testimony.
Madam Chair, for the record, Peter Brickwitty from the Commerce Department. My apologies, I had stepped out into the hallway. Thank you to Chair Stephenson and the committee. We're very grateful for the inclusion of the department's policy bills in the omnibus, including the technical and housekeeping bill, which is the vehicle, our telecom policy bill carried by Representative Kraft, our weights and measures policy bill carried by Representative Tabke, the consumer protection bill carried by Representative Shaw, the securities policy bill, Madam Chair, that you are carrying, as well as our financial institutions bill, and the CSBS Non-Bank Data Security Model Act that Representative Freiberg is carrying. These bills all represent our efforts to modernize key provisions in the state statutes and rules, the governing telecommunications, securities, banking, mortgage, licensure, updating our gasoline blend laws, and a variety of other areas to make life easier for consumers and businesses. We're committed to continuing to work with Chair Stephenson on a couple of smaller provisions in the omnibus bill that we're still working on with stakeholders. Our expectation is that we will have agreement on all of those outstanding issues as this process goes forward. And I'll thank you for your time, Madam Chair. My last comment is, because I know he's watching, I would like to make sure that Representative Davids knows that in this bill there is a reduction in continuing education course hourly requirements for appraisers. Madam Chair, happy to answer any questions that come up forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Brickwitty.
No, no worries.
Next, we have Shannon Slatton. You can introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony. You will be followed by Daniel Lightfoot.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Shannon Slatton Schwartz, and I'm Executive Director of CCX Media and the Northwest Suburbs Cable Communication Commission. Today I also have the honor of representing MACTA, a trade association in the state representing 135 local PEG stations and 838 cities that receive franchising and PEG. The beauty and the challenge of PEG stations is that we are all different, yet we all produce unique programming that viewers simply cannot get anywhere else. Whether that's a city council meeting, a parade, a news story, or a game that produces a buzzer beater shot like you might have seen last week when Orono beat Benilde St. Margaret's at the last minute to advance in the state tournament. You might have seen that. That shot was picked up on local affiliates as well as ESPN. Why did we have that when other stations didn't? They stopped by, grabbed a few highlights, went on to the next game, but we stayed until the end because no one covers our community like we do. And we know that people are watching. CCX Media's website alone generated 1.2 million visitors in 2023 and 7.8 million on our YouTube channels collectively. But that's just the flashy stuff. The advocacy that we do that's outlined in our cable franchise agreement is also very important. And as people have switched to streaming through broadband services, our commission's phone number is still on the bill where they can call for help. It's the only local number there. And we answer those calls to try to help people who just can't seem to get what they need to get done with call centers or AI chatbots. We've also been a watchdog advocating for consumers on the national level. Cable commissions like mine are the only Minnesota governmental entities to file comments at the FCC advocating for all-in pricing to provide clarity for cable subscribers. Local franchising authorities were also the only entities in Minnesota to file at the FCC to support rules to prohibit digital discrimination. Our comments were cited multiple times in the FCC's final report and order. The advocacy that we do matters, the content that we create matters, and that's why we ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Lightfoot, you can introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony. You'll be followed by Javier Vasquez.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Daniel Lightfoot with the League of Minnesota Cities. The League represents the collective interests of 838 member cities across the state of Minnesota. I want to focus my comments on two of the broadband policy provisions in the DE amendments that the League and our members are supportive of. The language in Article 4 include two important policy changes for cities across the state, including the ability, as you've heard, for local franchising authorities to franchise wireline broadband service providers who utilize public rights of way, as well as language that would remove anti-competitive barriers that for decades have made it overly challenging for cities to provide municipal broadband service. We strongly support the language in Article 4, Sections 1 through 11 from House File 4182, which was authored by Representative Freiberg. The language updates Minnesota telecom statutes to reflect the changing conditions of the market as more and more internet service providers seek access to our public rights of way across the state to deliver services by extending local franchise authority to include internet service providers. The provisions in 4182 will give local franchising authorities greater authority to manage valuable real estate in the public right-of-way, receive reasonable compensation for the use of the public right-of-way, and ensure build-out requirements to address digital inequities in our communities, as well as support local community media, as you've heard. We do support the language in the A8 amendment. This language is based on concerns raised from some of the provider community that we believe addresses a number of concerns that were raised, as Mr. Bradley pointed out. We also support the language in Article 4, Section 13 that includes language from Representative Kraft's House File 3679, which does remove unreasonable and preemptive barriers for communities seeking to establish municipal broadband networks. More specifically, it's the removal of the requirements that require a supermajority voter approval for the provision of municipal broadband. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Next, we have Javier Vasquez, followed by Tim Johnson. You can introduce yourself when you're ready and proceed with your testimony.
So thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Javier Vasquez, like the Puerto Rican singer from Menudo, Súbete a mi moto. So executive director, I'm the executive director of Sample Neighborhood Network, the PEC programming station in the Sample area. And in an age where digital connectivity and access to information are cornerstones of personal growth and community development, ensuring equitable access to this resources is more critical than ever. SPNN is deeply embedded in serving and uplifting its community is pivotal, necessitating support for these two essential legislative bills. These initiatives are not merely about expanding infrastructure, it's about democratizing access to digital resources. These bills promise to bridge the digital divide that separates the affluent from the underprivileged by enabling cities to ensure uniform broadband quality. It's a move toward digital equity, ensuring that every resident has equal broadband access regardless of socio-economic status. This is vital for a community-centric organization like SPNN, as equitable broadband access directly translates to enhanced community engagement, education, and empowerment. This bill acknowledges the changing media consumption landscape and adapts to ensure that access to television remains a viable and vibrant platform for community voices. For SPNN, this bill could signify a steady stream of support, enabling it to continue offering a diverse range of programming that reflects and addresses community needs. For SPNN, these bills are not just legislative actions. They are lifelines that can ensure the continued ability to serve their communities effectively. The Equal Access to Broadband bill promises to level the playing field, making sure every resident has the opportunity to connect, learn, and grow. For the Sample Neighborhood Network, supporting these bills is not just about advocating for policy change, it's about committing to a future where every community member can thrive in an increasingly digital world. Please support the inclusion of the Equal Access to Broadband Act in HA 4077, the Omnibus Commerce Bill. Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Finally, we have Tim Johnson. You can introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I am here in opposition. I'm a local attorney. I do construction and insurance law to the amendments in A9, which I think were maybe introduced last night, but I'm not sure if they've been added. So I'm not sure if my testimony is appropriate yet or not. Is it? Okay, thank you. So this bill, frankly, is probably one of the least consumer-friendly bills that we'll ever look at. The challenges with the bill are as follows. There are, I'm going to go through the subdivisions because it's the easiest way to look through them. Subdivision 1, and this bill is amending 325E66, which prohibits contractors from offering an inducement to get people to enter into insurance agreements with them when their house suffers storm damage. This law has existed for years. It does not need to be disturbed. The First Amendment to Section 1, as a lawyer, that adds additional language that's not necessary to the statute. It is not offensive, but you may want to revise it so people don't think that those are the only things it applies to. Section 2 is where the statute completely falls apart on a consumer level. Section 2 would state that the contractor and homeowner cannot enter in an agreement to perform work where insurance proceeds might be payable. Think of a flood, a water loss, a fire loss, a hail loss, unless the contractor provides a detailed written estimate, essentially shifting the burden of providing an estimate to make repairs from the insurance company to the contractor who is not getting paid for that. It is virtually the only duty that the insurance company has under the policy. Moreover, this bill as written would essentially prohibit homeowners who have an emergency problem, a roof is blown off in a tornado, emergency mitigation from fire or water, until the contractor has time to go to their office and provide a written estimate. This is by far the least consumer-friendly bill on the entire docket that I've read that is in front of you, and I would ask that this not be disturbed. Finally, Section 3, the bill would seek to add language that prohibits a contractor from talking about an insurance policy or construing it to a homeowner. That has been a part of Chapter 72B since 2010. I believe that if you put it in this bill, there will be confusion between the Attorney General and the Commerce Office as to who enforces this. And I would suggest, again, only as an attorney trying to be helpful to the staff, that that be deleted so there isn't confusion between the statutes. But to be clear, my biggest problem is that it would prohibit a contractor from helping a homeowner go inspect their damage before they've provided an estimate. To be perfectly clear, this is how it works for every single homeowner. They think that they have damage, they have their contractor come out. All of the good contractors in the state of Minnesota now will meet with the homeowner for free, do an inspection for free, and often they'll meet with the insurance carrier for free. The only promise the homeowner has to give is that if that work gets approved and the contractor is able to do it, that they will do that work. There is no reason to take that ally out of the consumer's hands, and there is no reason to prevent them from mitigating damage if it's an emergency situation.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We have Bill Butler. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Madam Chair and members, my name is Bill Butler. I'm president of Butler & Associates Insurance Agency in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and next month marks my 20th year in the insurance industry, selling and servicing personal and commercial insurance products. I'm here today on behalf of the Independent Agents Association of Minnesota, the Big I, to express our strong support for the A9 amendment, which will curb storm chasers practices that exacerbate rising homeowners insurance premiums, and I'd like to thank Chair Stephenson for bringing this forward. The A9 amendment will prevent contractors from offering incentives to homeowners for pressuring neighbors into using specific contracting companies and filing an insurance claim. This will ensure that insurance costs reflect the true cost of insurance claims and not inflated by trips, gift cards, cash, and prevent claim churning. It will also prevent contractors from requiring homeowners to sign a contract without providing a homeowner a good faith estimate when a claim is involved. I'm not aware of any other instance where a consumer would sign a binding contract to pay for services without at least an estimate being involved. Many of the contracts I have seen have punitive termination clauses, and consumers can be left holding the bag if they decide to change contractors after an insurance claim is approved. I have a contract where a contractor was signed by one of my insureds that if they decided to not work with that contractor, they had to pay a 20% penalty on the claim if they decided to change contractors. As I shared with this committee during the hearing on climate change and insurance costs earlier this session, on an individual basis, gift cards, trips may not be a big deal, but taken across a whole, this is piling on the higher frequency of severe convective storms and inflation pressures driving insurance claims. These contracts are part of the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. All right, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this bill today? We see I have somebody coming down. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Madam Chair, Tony Mendoza, Counsel for the Minnesota Cable Communications Association. MCCA members provide strong, reliable broadband services that enabled Americans to continue working during the COVID-19 pandemic. They're strong partners in Minnesota's border-to-border broadband grant program, bringing broadband to those who don't have it. They have led the way in designing new broadband affordability programs. In short, MCCA members have brought Minnesota to the doorstep of universal broadband service, and they look forward to finishing the job. Let me be clear, the new broadband franchising provisions in Article 4 would stop Minnesota's progress toward universal broadband dead in its tracks and make broadband more expensive for citizens of the state. By its plain language, all broadband and broadband-enabled services covered by the bill currently provided today would become illegal on the date of enactment of this bill until the service provider obtains a franchise from a local government. The bill authorizes a new 8% local tax on broadband and broadband-enabled services. This bill was touted as the Equal Access to Broadband Act, but the millions of dollars that would be raised by this new broadband tax won't further any cause that makes broadband more affordable or accessible. 5% would go to local governmental general funds, 3% would be dedicated to public educational governmental access television programmers. Cable Association also has concerns about Article 4, Section 13, that would remove the local referendum requirement protecting taxpayers from risky government-owned networks and protects private investment in telecommunications networks from condemnation. MCCA is also concerned that Article 1, Section 15 would duplicate and conflict with FCC and FTC regulations requiring disclosure of fees and surcharges to cable and video and broadband customers. We urge you to vote against the onerous new broadband taxes and regulations in the omnibus bill amendment. Let's not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in our shared quest for universal broadband. Thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns.
Thank you. All right, looks like one other member of the public wishes to testify. You can come down to the dais and introduce yourself and proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Andy Morris. I am the Public Affairs and Legislative Liaison at the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans. Thank you for the opportunity to very briefly testify on the A10 amendment on behalf of the Thai Cultural Council of Minnesota. The Council has been proud to support the work of the Thai Cultural Council of Minnesota in support of the Minnesota Songkran Festival, which has been held in May each of the last 2 years just outside of this building on the Capitol lawn. This event has grown rapidly since its first year in 2022, from 20,000 in its first year to 30,000 last year. As it has grown, the Thai Cultural Council has continued to explore partnerships with other Asian Pacific Minnesotan communities. The A10 amendment would allow the Thai Cultural Council of Minnesota to offer beer sales at Songkran, not just through itself, but in partnership with other organizations through concession contracts in a carefully managed area during Songkran. Funds from these sales would then go on to support the community and form an important part of future activities. This small but meaningful change will allow Songkran to continue to grow and serve as an important source of funds to support both Minnesota's Thai community and other Asian Pacific communities. We ask the committee for its support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any additional public comment, we will move to amendments to the amendment. Chair Stephenson, you move the A2 amendment to the amendment. Would you like to explain the A2?
Yep, I would move the A2 amendment. This is a relatively simple amendment that just provides some additional disclosure requirements for health insurance policies selling to school districts that should allow for a better evaluation from school districts. Members may know that school districts are facing some, particularly smaller school districts are facing some health insurance and pressures.
All right. Members, any discussion to the A2 amendment to the amendment? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Stephenson, we did not hear this particular provision. I understand that. I'm just wondering what are some of the things that are going to help us to make it just a little more transparent. That's all I'm just looking for, because we've been working on this issue along the way, and I just want to know where the benefit's going to come from.
Chair Stephenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll. So if you look on, and you're right, and it's just been under development. It came as an amendment, and that's why we are, taking testimony out and things like that today. But, if you look at page 2 of the amendment, it talks about requiring disclosure of the structure of the health plan, the actuarial value, the type of provider network. I could list all of the things that are on there, but this will allow an apples to apples comparison as school districts are looking at their options, both in terms of private plans and also the PEEP opportunity that exists, that's more of a collective school district approach that's out there as well. So it just allows for an apples to apples comparison.
All right, Representative O'Driscoll.
Just a quick follow-up. Would this also include if a district wanted an HMO option as well, if they're looking and scanning the marketplace to see what's available?
Chair Stephenson.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, I believe so. It says all proposals for group health insurance coverage, and Ms. Pompu's nodding with me, so that would include HMOs. Yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Members, all in favor of the A2 amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A2 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Representative Tabke, you have the A3 amendment to the amendment. Would you like to move and introduce that amendment?
Yes, Chair Katiza-Watun. I move the A3 amendment, and what this is the last year we did work on the life insurance look back on suicide when someone commits complete suicide, and with that we changed it to 1 year. But as we were looking and working on that bill, we found some other outdated, obsolete language, and this is fixing that obsolete language, and this has agreement between insurance industry and NAMI. So this is agreed upon language moving forward.
Thank you. Chair Stephenson, any thoughts on the A3 amendment to the amendment?
I'd ask for a yes vote and appreciate Representative Tabke's work along with the work of the stakeholders to get this done.
Members, any further discussion to the A3 amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion prevails, and the A3 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Representative O'Driscoll, you have the A4 amendment to the amendment. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move the A4 amendment to the DE2 amendment. And what this does is in the property casualty arena, your insurance carrier or as a company that you work for as an agent may or may not offer certain types of coverage that a consumer may come and ask you for. And there's a place for the agent to place this coverage, which is called the surplus lines or the extended market. And what happens is oftentimes carriers know that whatever the request is going to be, they don't have that coverage. They may have received previous inquiries from people. And the way the statute reads right now is they have to get 3 letters of declination, which simply means 3 declines from carriers on this. This removes that requirement, and the department is in support of that change. What it does is it allows the carrier and the agent to immediately go to a surplus lines agency or provider for this to be able to save time for the consumer when looking for insuring a coverage. It's wonky stuff that this committee knows I'm involved with quite a bit. So.
All right, Chair Stephenson, any response to the wonky amendment?
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, it's an amendment that I can support. I ask for a yes vote.
All right, very good. Members, any further discussion to the A4 amendment to the DE2 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A4 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A5. Chair Stephenson, would you like to move and introduce the A5 amendment to the amendment?
Madam Chair, I move the A5 amendment to the amendment. This does some technical corrections to some of the agency bill proposals. It also removes some sections that are in the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee. These bills did not make it to the Judiciary Committee to be heard there, and the underlying bill is going to go to the General Register, not through the Judiciary Committee, so we need to remove those pieces of language.
Any discussion, members, to the A5 amendment to the DE2 amendment? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A5 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Look at us moving right along. Chair Stephenson.
Jinx.
Just trying to shine some sunshine on a snowy Friday. Chair Stephenson, you have the A6 amendment to the amendment. Any discussion after Chair Stephenson introduces the amendment?
Madam Chair, I'll move the A6 amendment. This updates the coordination of benefits language and modifies the non-bank security language from the technical bills. There is an oral amendment that is necessary on the A6. So on line 1.3, in between the words without and delay, we would like to insert the word undo.
Ms. Pompu, can you help us explain that?
Sure. Chair and members, this is just a minor oral amendment, and as it should be written out, it would be an amendment to the A6 amendment, line 1.3, after without, insert undo.
All right. Members, any discussion to the oral amendment to the A6 amendment, to the DE2 amendment? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of the oral amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The oral amendment is adopted to the A6. Any discussion to the A6 amendment as amended? All right. Seeing none, all in favor of the A6 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The A6 amendment as amended is adopted. Chair Stephenson, would you like to move and introduce the A7 amendment to the amendment?
Madam Chair, I move the A7 amendment. This makes technical changes to the crypto kiosk bill that Representative Hemmingson-Yager brought before the committee. I understand she worked with some other members on the committee and with stakeholders and regulators to move the bill a little bit further and make it a little bit better. I'd ask for support for the A7.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Stephenson. I just wanted to second what you said about Representative Hemmingson-Yager's work on this. She did incorporate a lot of feedback from a lot of people, including myself and industry stakeholders, and this is what we've gotten to at this point. I think it's, I'm not sure it's perfect yet. I'm not sure if we've fully figured out from every possible stakeholder if there are some implementation problems, but this is a really important step in the right direction on a really important issue. So I appreciate you bringing the amendment, and I think this is a step in the right direction.
Any further discussion to the A7 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The A7 amendment is adopted after the motion prevails. The A9 amendment, I believe, is an oral amendment. And Chair Stephenson.
Madam Chair, I'll move the A9 amendment, and then first, I do have an oral amendment to strike lines 2.17 to 2.20. Those lines transfer enforcement of this provision from the Department of Labor Industry to the Attorney General. And similar to the earlier discussion about the Judiciary Committee, we need to take that out of this amendment. So that would be my oral amendment to the A9.
All right. Members, any discussion to the oral amendment to the A9 amendment?
Madam Chair, could we just restate which lines we're striking?
Certainly. Ms. Pompu, would you clarify?
Sure. Chair and members, we're on the A9 amendment. If you look at page 2, it's page 2, delete lines 17 to 20.
All right. Any further discussion, members, to the oral amendment to the A9 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the oral amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The oral amendment is incorporated. Chair Stephenson, to the A9 as amended.
Madam Chair, we heard some, and I'll move the A9. I think I already did move the A9, but just to be safe, I'll move the A9. We heard some discussion during the testimony about this. This kind of relates all the way back to our first hearing this year, which dealt with the impact that the climate crisis is having on insurance markets, and specifically the practice of rebating or offering consumers financial incentives to pick a particular contractor. And in its more abusive form, it could be a situation where a contractor says, if you get some of your neighbors to sign up with me, I'll cover your insurance deductible or give you an even larger incentive. I have seen advertisements for trips to Caribbean destinations in exchange for a certain amount of referrals. These types of referrals, as I think one testifier noted, have been illegal in Minnesota for many years, these types of rebates and inducements, but they are still definitely happening. I have in my office a stack of examples that is about an inch thick that was provided to me. So this language clarifies, tightens up that requirement, and as we continue to try and keep our homeowners insurance affordable in Minnesota, I think this is an important reform. I'd ask for member support.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Stephenson. appreciate the problem as it relates to rebidding. As you acknowledge, I think, or as you noted, a lot of this stuff that this is targeted at already is illegal, and I'm not sure that, as Mr. Johnson testified, I'm not sure that this really meaningfully changes the law with respect to that. I'm talking specifically at lines, 1.13 through 1.18 of the amendment. The last part of that, I think, is maybe a little bit of a change in the law, the Romanet 3. But I actually have worked with Mr. Johnson. I've worked in this industry. I worked in-house at a residential contractor, and so I've seen actually what I've seen examples of bad practices. I think that we should think about that. But I do think that subparts 2 and 3, stretching from the bottom of page 1 to the top of page 2, are actually written a little too broadly in ways that really do sweep in what good contractors do to actually provide a service to homeowners who've probably never had to deal with a insurance claim on their home, or if they have, they maybe done it once, and really provide a service and helping them, sharing their experience with them, helping them walk through that process. Sometimes that does involve signing some sort of a contingent agreement, and I have seen contingent agreements like what Mr. Butler is talking about that could, if they were actually enforced the letter, be abusive. But again, we're talking about a contractor coming in, providing essentially a free service to and experience to a homeowner to help walk them through a process that the homeowner doesn't really have experience in. And there are good contractors, Minnesota-based contractors, who do that in a way that is providing an important service. And I think that 2 and 3, 3 in terms of interpreting policy provisions or advising an insured, there are ways that some of that is already appropriately cabined in by, they're not lawyers, they can't practice law, they're not public adjusters, they can't practice public adjusting. But there are still other things they can do to provide experience or, a service to the homeowners that I think is not something that we should be trying to prohibit. And so I am really concerned. I think Mr. Johnson is right that at least those provisions 2 and 3 are not really quite ready yet and do actually potentially harm consumers in this process. We don't want, contractors to be running up the bill on insurance companies, inappropriately. I think that's a fair concern to be taking advantage of. But I personally have helped contractors walk through this process and understand the legal landscape, and I think that this does hurt good contractors and potentially hurt a lot of homeowners who might get some helpful advice through the process by those good contractors. So I would encourage maybe if we could divide the amendment and approve part of it, but not lines 1.19 through 2.3.
Okay. Members, Representative Niska is, Chair Stephenson.
Before we actually do a motion to divide, can I just say this, that I think that what I heard Representative Niska say is that maybe there's some concerns that this is too broad, but also there's something legitimate there. I'm happy to continue the conversation as the bill moves to the floor and eventually to conference committee. There's still opportunities to tweak or shape the language, and I'm happy to work on it. I'll just tell Representative Niska if he brings a motion to divide, which is totally his right to do, I'll still be encouraging members to vote yes on both halves of the amendment. You do what you want, but I just want you to know that I'm willing to work with you, even if this goes on as we move towards the floor and conference committee on this.
Representative Niska, to your motion or no motion?
No, I didn't make a motion to divide, and I appreciate that. I'm not going to make a motion to divide. I think I'm going to vote against the amendment at this point because I don't think that it's ready. But in terms of if there's some additional enforcement we need to make sure that inappropriate gift cards aren't being offered. This is something that Dolly already does try to enforce. Maybe they need some more tools in that department. And if there's some way that we can target, particular practices related to contingent agreements that contractors enter into, I think something very narrowly focused on that might be appropriate. But the way that this is written right now, I think Mr. Johnson's right that it's anti-consumer the way it's written right now.
Chair Stephenson.
I would just ask members to vote yes on the A9.
Okay, looks like we have a couple more thoughts. Representative Schultz.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and Representative Stephenson. Absent just having this earlier in its own bill, I just wanted to see if we had maybe additional testimony that could be provided as to how prevalent of an issue this is, and if there's specific examples, whether that comes from, I think it was Mr. Butler, or if there's any information that could be provided from the department or even the Department of Labor if available today.
Yeah, Representative Schultz, folks from the public weighed in on this as well as other members, so I think we're not going to take any additional testimony now.
Okay, because this, Madam Chair, this would be our last opportunity on this in a public setting to get more information. That's my reason for asking the question, for specific examples of that.
Chair Stephenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Schultz, we did, Mr. Butler did kind of talk about his experience with that and talked about some of the things that he has seen, and I'm sure he could provide you with additional examples. Like I said, I have in my office a huge stack of examples of rebating that occurred just like in the last year, and I'd be happy to provide you with a copy of that after the hearing to show kind of what we're trying to get at here. So I'm sure Mr. Butler could talk to you after the hearing, and I would be very happy to provide you with the documents I have.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I support the underlying intent of this, and I like the idea. The question I have is, again, getting wonky and parsy on some of this stuff, because we may have regulators back here going, we're not sure who has which jurisdiction on this. Under 60K, the agent is regulated. Under 72B, the public adjuster is regulated. Under the jurisdiction for contractors in the state of Minnesota, that's the Department of Labor and Industry. Now we're introducing the Attorney General's office in here. I don't know if there's a clear delineation as to who has what authority, other than the fact that I see lines 217 through 218 that basically strips the power of the licensing entity to take any disciplinary action against the people that they're purported by law to supervise and to take disciplinary action. It's being moved over to the Attorney General's office. I don't know that that's exactly what we want to do on here, is to remove the authority of the licensing entity and the enforcing agency.
Chair Stephenson.
Never mind.
The oral amendment removed those parts,
A
correct?
lot of moving parts here this morning, but nonetheless, if I were to guess what the chair is going to tell me, the oral amendment took care of that, Representative O'Driscoll, so.
Chair Stephenson.
That is what I was going to say, that we did remove the language you're concerned about. I did want to add, though, that the reason why we put that in there was because the storm chaser language we passed last year, which is enforced by the Attorney General, has been working really well. The Attorney General has been doing a really good job, and I think you've been hearing that when we had the hearing here, the industry testified to that effect. So that's why we were looking at that, but we did take it out by oral amendment.
I do see Mr. Cockey nodding in the audience as well. Representative O'Driscoll.
And again, I started my comments, I support the underlying of what's going here. I just want to make sure that we aren't overshooting the mark here and with our regulatory and who's got what jurisdiction. And maybe there is some additional time that needs to be looked at on this to come to that answer. So I think you're on the right track with this amendment. But again, I'm concerned that we have clear definition of who the regulators are.
Members, any further discussion to the A9 amendment as amended? All right, seeing none, those in favor of the A9 amendment as amended to the DE2 amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
The motion prevails, and the oral, the A9 amendment as amended to the amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A10 amendment. Representative Farr, would you like to move and explain the A10 amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll move the A10 to the D2 amendment. This is the amendment that that our last testifier spoke on. So the in regarding the Songkran Festival for the Thai Cultural Council of Minnesota. So this simply adds those that have concession contract with the council to those that can serve alcohol, again, with the permission of St. Paul City Council.
Representative Stephenson, any thoughts?
I think it's a great amendment. I urge members to vote yes.
All right. Members, all in favor of the A10 amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A10 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A11 amendment. So I will move the A11 amendment to the amendment. And members, this is going off of the bill we passed last year, and payroll processing services were included in one of our bills from last year, and they are there's agreement across the board that payroll processors do not actually need to be included. So this amendment removes them from what we had passed last year. Chair Stephenson, any thoughts?
It's a good amendment, but please vote yes.
All right, members, any discussion to the A11? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A11 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Chair Stephenson, you have the A13 amendment to the amendment.
Madam Chair, members, the A13 amendment makes a few changes to the junk fees bill by Representative Greenman, makes some clarifications, results of some work with stakeholders and other matters. I'd ask for a yes vote.
Members, any discussion to the A13 amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A13 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Chair Stephenson, you also moved the A15 amendment to the amendment. Can you explain? And
the A15 amendment, again, makes some technical changes to the 1989 ticketing fee bill, reflecting discussions, and also bring the bill in alignment with changes made in the Senate.
members, any discussion to the A15 amendment to the amendment? Representative O'Driscoll, do you have any Taylor Swift quotes that you'd like to share today?
I do have a comment. I hope this doesn't prohibit Taylor Swift from coming here, because that's a pretty popular thing, and that's this particular bill. So
All right.
I would defer also to my colleague, Representative Cagle, as we both have watched this over the years.
All right, members, all in favor of the A15 amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A15 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Representative Tapke, you have the A16 amendment.
Thank you very much. I move the A16 amendment, which is the earlier, I think it was just earlier this week, we talked about the percentage deductible. It's been a long week with the percentage deductible, and it requires that it is not only a percentage deductible that gets offered to folks, that it also includes a flat dollar deductible as well. So it's not just one or the other. It's making sure that people have options.
All right. Members, any further discussion to the A16? Chair Stephenson?
Please vote yes.
All right. All in favor of the A16 amendment to the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A16 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A17. Rep. Schultz, would you like to move and explain the A17 amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move the A17 amendment. And the A17 amendment just adds an effective date that marks it to January 1st of 2025. As we heard in public testimony presented on the net neutrality provisions of this bill earlier during session, we heard that we are awaiting federal action on this topic. And so this is just pushing, and that federal action is expected to be heard during or decided upon during this calendar year, during 2024. So federal action would supersede, a state law on this, and so pushing this section out to January 1st, 2025 would just provide us a little bit of more of that federal approach to this issue.
All right. Representative Kraft.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Schultz. I think it's logical, and I'm fine to accept the amendment. I'd recommend a yes vote.
All right. Members, any further discussion to the A17? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and the A17 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Next, we have the A23 amendment. Representative Niska, would you like to move and describe the A23 amendment to the amendment?
Well, yes, are we going to do the, just out of curiosity, the A8 amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Niska, our nonpartisan staff had to be out of the room for a little bit. He's coming back, so we're saving that one for when he returns.
So,
Representative Niska, to the A23?
Appreciate that. So there would be an oral amendment that would be needed if we do adopt the A8 amendment.
Madam Chair?
Oh, Chair Stephenson.
Can I suggest that we instead take up the A26?
Certainly. All right, we will come back to discussion on the A23. Representative Stevenson, you have the A26. Would you like to move and explain?
Madam Chair, I move the A26. This is amendments to the debt bill that Representative Ryer is the chief author of and is working with the Attorney General. Much like the other amendments that we've discussed earlier, this reflects ongoing stakeholder conversations. Representative Ryer and all of the stakeholders have been working very diligently to try and find common ground, and I appreciate all of their efforts and ask members to adopt this amendment.
All right, members, any discussion to the A26 amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right, the motion prevails, and the A26 amendment to the amendment is adopted. All right, members, now we are going to move to the A8 amendment to the amendment, and Representative Freiberg, would you like to move and describe the A8?
Sure, I will move the A8 amendment. I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. So I had prepared kind of a detailed description of this amendment, but Mr. Bradley provided that in his testimony. Suffice it to say that the amendment addresses several concerns that were raised during the hearing on the Equal Access to Broadband Act. I don't know that it'll make everybody happy, but it does clarify the language and put some limitations in place. Happy to describe what it does in more detail if members would like a recap, but since it was covered by Mr. Bradley, I won't at this time out of respect for members' time.
Okay, Representative Niska?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Freiberg, for this amendment. I think it's better than the underlying bill. It definitely is clarifying in a lot of different ways, and I think it's important, again, that we remember that the bill has been justified on the basis of, supporting equity in building out broadband or supporting local cable access programs. And I think particularly clarifying, I think, for the public should be the language on the top of page 2 that says that a provider franchise fee shall not exceed 5% of the provider's gross revenues. So that's the first piece. That's just a pot of money that's just available to the cities. And up to an additional 3% of the provider's gross revenues dedicated in support of local programming if the local franchising authority or its designee operates an access channel. So this is an 8% tax to every consumer. It's of course going to be passed through by the providers to people, everyone in the city who uses broadband. It's an 8% tax, and again, the priorities are that the vast majority of it gets to go to the city to just fund their general revenue without having to put it on your property tax statement and have you understand that the city is taxing you for that amount. And only 3% is dedicated to the local public access piece. That's been the main justification for this. So, I mean, again, this is, like we said earlier, and it's ironic that now it's in the same bill as the junk fee provision, which has within it an exception that junk fees are not something that the government charges you. We are allowing all of our local governments to have a totally untransparent new taxing authority in order to try to raise revenue for roads or parks or whatever they would normally have to raise your property taxes to pay for in their city budget. Now they just get to put it on your monthly broadband bill, where you don't realize that it's there, where you don't realize that this is something that's been decided for you by your elected city council members, that they're raising taxes on you. So I guess I'm in support of the A8 amendment because it's better to have at least some cap and some clarity than a completely uncapped one. But I think that the priorities are totally messed up, Representative Freiberg, that you're just giving local cities, a new junk tax.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the amendment's author. I wanted to ask, and I'm basing this off of the testimony that we heard from Mr. Bradley. I thought I heard him say that this was going to exclude satellite service, and yet I'm reading in line 1.6 of the amendment that is included. Could you provide some clarity for us?
Representative Freiberg.
Yeah, thank you. That's an exclusion of them. Let's see, I have marked it up. The language it modifies says it does not include an electric cooperative association under Chapter 308A, and then with the with the additional language, it adds into that exclusion a wireless provider or a satellite provider. But Mr. Eliff can confirm my reading of that.
Mr. Eliff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Freiberg is correct. This adds to the exclusionary part of that for the definition of provider.
Representative Schultz, any follow-up?
Okay, thank you. No, I mean, I echo what Representative Niska said, and, you know, I think about it through the lens of this, you know, this would allow for rural townships in my community to just add on a huge fee to consumers, to the township residents, and 70% of the people who live in my community live in townships, and this bill would literally allow for a very exceedingly small group of people to put in a new fee to the tune of up to 8%, and so I do have significant concerns with the Expensive Access and Bloated Government Act.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would just remind the committee that, I mean, it's in statute, a fee is defined as a tax. So this is a tax, a local tax that will, if we don't add this amendment, will not go before the people. And most of those things we take very seriously, right? We allow especially at the local level, we don't do a lot of local taxing without some oversight. Thank you.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you. Just to Representative Niska's comments, it is appropriate, I believe, to have some revenue for cities in there. There are costs to cities of managing the right-of-way that this franchise intended to accommodate. I'm happy to keep working with you, Representative Niska, on this. As Chair Stephenson mentioned on an earlier amendment, there's opportunities as this goes to the floor, as this goes to conference, to keep refining the language. So happy to keep working with you on that language. But it sounds like you're supportive of this amendment, so maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Any further discussion to the A8 amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails and the A8 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Now, Representative Niska, yep, would you like to take up the A23 amendment to the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And now it would be more appropriate to take up the A23 because of the A8, there's an oral amendment that's needed. And so on lines 1.4 and 1.5, I would request that the words political subdivision be stricken and add local franchise authority.
Right.
That would be my motion to amend the A23 amendment. Representative
Niska suggests an oral amendment to the A23 amendment to the DE2 amendment. Mr. Eliff, perhaps you could help us walk through that and clarify?
Surely, Madam Chair. Page 1, line 4, delete political subdivision, insert local franchise authority. Page 1, line 5, delete political subdivisions, insert local franchise authorities.
Members, any further discussion to the Niska oral amendment to the A23 amendment? Seeing Representative Freiberg?
To the extent my opinion matters, Madam Chair, I guess this makes the language consistent. So I'll withhold my thoughts on the underlying amendment, but I think this does make sense.
Right. To the oral amendment to the A23 amendment to the amendment, members, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right. The oral amendment is incorporated to the A23 amendment. Representative Niska, to your amendment as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Freiberg, for your support, at least on that part of it. No, this is a continuation, I think, of the real concern I have about how this thing works. And Representative Freiberg, I appreciate that there might be some small costs to maintaining the right-of-way. The idea that in any way is proportionate to 5% of the total, broadband cost in a city, I think is dubious and definitely unproven. So really what this is, the upshot of the, I guess it's named, or Representative Schultz has named it the Expensive Access and Bloated Government Act. It's creating a serious transparency and accountability problem with our local governments. It's allowing them to create a new hidden tax and that it does not need to be approved by the voters and is not clearly something that where the voters are able to hold their city council or township board accountable for it. So in order to remedy that, instead of saying, let's just strike the tax, I tried to come up with a compromise, which would be that the voters in that political subdivision or that franchising authority get an opportunity to vote on that. I had experience with this in our own city of Ramsey. There was a move to have a franchise fee, and then the Charter Commission considered a charter amendment that the City Council decided they didn't want to have a vote on that. Later, the City Council did approve a franchise fee and ended up resulting in a change in the City Council because there was a lot of concern about exactly these issues in the city of Ramsey. So I think this is just a pretty basic, pro-democracy amendment, and so I expect that we'll have a lot of support for it.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Niska. I'm not supportive of this amendment. This places a roadblock in place that isn't there with cable franchises. I think broadband franchises should be treated similarly to cable franchises. I mean, generally speaking, we should let elected folks make decisions that lead their communities. And the example you cited, Representative Niska, of the city of Ramsey, you said the people were voted out because it was unpopular. That to me says the system is working as intended. This is permissive. It doesn't say cities have to adopt a franchise. So I imagine if the city is worried about the political ramifications of doing so, they won't do so. So I would not be supportive of this amendment.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Niska. I think that this is really exciting to bring forward a pro-democracy amendment that really puts this in the hands of the people and ensures the greatest participation, ensuring that it happens in the next even year general election. Exceedingly important to us, and especially when we consider some of the other negative impacts that we've seen made when local jurisdictions are seeking to get involved in, say, things like Uber and Lyft and limiting our ability to get around places, including your own community. So this is pretty formative for us to ensure that we're elevating people's voice through the next even year general election.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members. I appreciate the discussion on here. We have an entire committee called, or I should say division, the local property tax division that I also sit on, and we hear requests for people wanting to do local option sales tax and other things which are referendum driven in many cases. Anytime you're going to be asking people to raise their taxes, particularly at the local level, it seems to me that we do this with school referendums, we do these other kinds of things. Why wouldn't they have the opportunity to be able to voice their opinion at the ballot box on this? Madam Chair, I'd like to have a roll call on this. I think it's that important that we want to know where we stand in raising taxes and fees.
Representative O'Driscoll requests a roll call. There will be a roll call on the A23 amendment as amended. Representative Freiberg, any further thoughts? Chair Stephenson?
Madam Chair, members, I would ask members to vote no on the amendment.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A23 amendment as amended.
Chair Cortez Batune?
No.
Cortez Batune, no. Lead O'Driscoll?
Yes.
O'Driscoll, aye. Representative Bierman?
Bierman, no.
Bierman, no. Representative Cha?
No.
Cha, no. Representative Dotseth?
Yes.
Dotseth, aye. Representative Freiberg?
No.
Freiberg, no. Representative Cleavorn?
No.
Cleavorn, no. Representative Kegel?
No.
Kegel, no. Representative Kraft?
No.
Kraft, no. Representative Liebling? Not here. Representative
Excused.
New Brindley?
Yes.
New Brindley, aye. Representative Niska?
Yes.
Niska, aye. Representative Perryman?
Yes, Perryman.
Perryman, aye. Representative Farr?
Farr, aye.
Farr, aye. Representative Schultz?
Schultz, yes.
Schultz, aye. Representative Stephenson?
No.
Stephenson, no. Representative Tabke?
No.
Tabke, no.
There being 7 ayes and 9 nays, the motion does not prevail, and the A23 amendment to the amendment is not adopted. Members, next we have the A29 amendment to the amendment. I believe Rep. Schultz, you're going to move and introduce the A29?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do move the A29 amendment. Again, I think we're saying in the exact same statute here. With that, the A29 ensures that on a topic like this, since we can't have full voter referendum on these issues, and since that idea isn't there, we want to ensure that this is really the consensus of that local jurisdiction. And so actually at this time, Madam Chair, should we also move an oral amendment to change the governing body to be exactly what we did before, the local franchise authority? I'd move an oral amendment to change governing body to the local franchise authority.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Eliff.
The 829 amendment is amending language on page 143. It's part of Representative Kraft's bill, so the oral amendment may not be necessary.
All right. Representative Schultz, further thoughts?
Very good. Well, same thing. I would just request a support for this so that it is the unanimous vote of the local governing body of that municipality.
All right. So Representative Schultz, are you withdrawing
Yes,
your
I am
motion for the
withdrawing.
oral amendment? All
Madam
right.
Chair.
Very good. Representative Cleaborn.
I would just like clarification as to what we're amending. Please, if we could have the author of the amendment tell us what we're amending.
Absolutely.
Okay. Representative Schultz.
Yep, we're on the 829 amendment. We are in line, we're on page 143, and we're going to line 24. And we reinstated some of the previous language that was in law, or is in law, I should say, currently. And then we're adding that a unanimous vote of the governing body of the municipality would result in the unanimous support of that governing body on the decision.
Representative Cleaborn.
I would still like to know what it is exactly that he wants to amend.
Representative Schultz.
Well, Representative Cleaborn, we are working right from the same bill, right? So we're using the language in this section.
Yes.
Representative Cleaborn.
Yes, but I'd like to understand his reasoning for wanting to amend this, please.
Okay. Representative Schultz.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Cleaborn. That's an entirely different question, obviously. This is seeking to ensure that if we're going to make a decision like this, that we are having, when a local jurisdiction is making this decision, that they have complete uniformity amidst their voting members. That's what this does.
Representative Cleaborn.
I just want to make sure, because you referenced this to a different bill and now different language. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we truly are on the same page as to what you think you're amending.
All right. Mr. Eliff, would you like to help clarify?
Madam Chair, we're in section 13 on page 143 of the DE2, and this is a section that speaks to municipalities having the right to own and operate a telephone exchange within its own borders. Current law requires a 65% vote of the population in the municipality to approve of that. Representative Schultz's amendment requires a unanimous vote of the governing body of the municipality to approve that.
Thank you, Mr. Eliff, for that clarification. Members, any further discussion to the A20? Representative O'Driscoll, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm hoping that if we can't have the people express their opinion like we did on the last one, that at least the people who the people vote and elect will have to have a strong consensus to do this in moving forward. As was provided in testimony and background by Representative Niska, in a community where there was some dissent, the body was removed on the city council who had that jurisdiction. Certainly, it's not inconceivable or a stretch that we would want to have a supermajority, if not unanimous, consent of the governing body to do major things, for example, in the telecom industry, to take away a private business and, for the lack of the term nationalizing, but municipalizing that service. I think it's very realistic that the city council or governing body should be in a unanimous decision on this, and not just a simple majority. We're talking about major changes in the way that we're doing business in this state.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I would also like a roll call.
Representative O'Driscoll requests a roll call. On the 829, there will be a roll call. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add to that, I think the reason behind this are these are really consequential decisions for local municipalities that can't be easily rolled back. I mean, they can unelect the body, but once these kinds of decisions are made and are in motion, you can unelect, but you can't undo. And I think that would be the reason for a higher bar in getting these things done. These are really complicated issues, and again, that are really consequential. And it is reasonable to suggest that there should be a higher bar for getting these things done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Schultz, that was your amendment. So the proposed language in the amendment actually would move something to more strict than what is in the statute, which we are trying to change. And we went through this when the bill was heard. So I'm going to ask for a no vote. I will point out there have been negotiations ongoing based on some valid issues raised in this committee, including narrowing when a municipality may acquire facilities based on condemnation, and I support narrowing it. But there's ongoing negotiations. There was a offer sent on March 11th. We're waiting for a response on that. But this amendment is a step backwards and would be bad for Minnesotans, and so I ask for a no vote.
Chair Stephenson, any thoughts?
I agree with Representative Kraft.
All right. Chair Representative Schultz to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is a very serious concern when we're talking about providing this right for municipalities to do something that the private sector can do better. We don't have good examples to point to where government, especially in Minnesota, provides a service better than our private sector does. And so if we're going to move in this direction, if we're going to move in the way of allowing for municipalities to make that sort of decisions, to decide to get into something that the private market does better, that has to be uniformly accepted by that local jurisdiction and their governing body, which is exactly what my amendment does, and I encourage support of this amendment.
All right. The clerk will take the roll on the A29 amendment to the amendment, and the chair votes no.
Chair Kotisa-Wittsoon, no. Lead O'Driscoll?
Yes.
O'Driscoll, aye. Representative Bierman?
Bierman, no.
Bierman, no. Representative Cha?
No.
Cha, no. Representative Dotseth?
Yes.
Dotseth, aye. Representative Freiberg?
No.
Freiberg, no. Representative Cleavorn?
Cleavorn, no.
Cleavorn, no. Representative Kegel?
No.
Kegel, no. Representative Kraft?
No.
Kraft, no. Representative New Brindley?
Yes.
New Brindley, aye. Representative Niska?
Aye.
Niska, aye. Representative Perryman?
Perryman, yes.
Perryman, aye. Representative Farr?
Farr, aye.
Farr, aye. Representative Schultz?
Aye.
Schultz, aye. Representative Stephenson?
No.
Stevenson, no. Representative Tabke?
No.
Tabke, no.
There being 7 ayes and 9 nays, the motion does not prevail, and the 829 amendment to the amendment is not adopted. Members, finally, I believe we have an oral amendment from
We do, Madam
Representative
Chair, when it's appropriate.
Representative O'Driscoll, you can explain your oral amendment.
Thank you. Members, in the appraisal section of the omnibus bill, in consultation with the department, in consultation with some stakeholders, we'd like to remove some changes that are in here, and the department, I think, is prepared to testify if the committee has any questions on this. If you turn to page 12 of the bill, or excuse me, of the DE1 amendment, DE2, lines 12.13 through 12.17. It has to do with training for supervisory appraisers, and it's striking the language of a 6-hour course, and then it's also striking some other language for the titling of that course. My first oral amendment, because it appears in 2 sections of the bill, would be to basically delete the strikings of those and return it back to the statutory language that currently exists in state law.
All right. Ms. Pompu, perhaps you can walk us through that again?
Sure. Chair and members, we're going to go bold here and just take out all of Section 7 on page 12. So the motion is to delete Section 7 on page 12.
Representative O'Driscoll, is that your intent?
Yeah, as I was working with the stakeholders and stuff earlier today, since that is the only change, that we would be removing that section. And just one moment here as well. I think that would be the same thing that we would ultimately end up doing in Section 9. I would ask Ms. Pompo. Okay, so that's easier than I thought it was going to be. So deleting Section 7, and those stakeholders are going to work with one another to determine what that number needs to be at some point in the future, but we're maybe just a little ahead of ourselves on that particular number. And again, I believe the department is here if anyone has any questions.
Chair Stephenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Driscoll, I would urge members to support the oral amendment here. This was in the technical bill, and sort of an underlying rule of the technical bill is if someone opposes to a change, they take it out. So we should take it out.
Very good. Members, to the O'Driscoll oral amendment, to the DE2 amendment.
We don't need a roll call on this one, Madam Chair.
Very good.
For the record.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The oral amendment to the DE2 amendment is incorporated.
And then on page 14, Madam Chair, will be the second oral amendment, and it's basically removing Section 9, which has similar companion language in there that affects this topic. And I would ask before we leave this topic, I believe those are the only two references in this to that topic.
Ms. Pampu.
In this particular change that we have right now. I did not see anything else when I went in, and I don't want to create any
Chair and members.
stumbling blocks.
Ms. Pampu.
That seems right.
Right. Representative O'Driscoll, any further explanation?
A yes vote, please.
Chair Stephenson?
Likewise, please vote yes.
All right. To the oral amendment, the second oral amendment to the DE2 amendment, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Right. Representative O'Driscoll's second oral amendment to the DE2 amendment is incorporated, and to the underlying DE2 amendment, members, we have discussion. Representative Schultz.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a question for Mr. Berkwitty, if he is available.
Representative Stephenson.
Oh, I think he wants to ask Mr. I will have a motion once we get done with discussion and before we take up the amendment.
Very good.
But I think we can.
Thanks. Mr. Berkwitty.
Welcome back, Mr. Berkwitty. I have a question. Working from page 125, this follows an earlier discussion had in this committee, but I want to gain some clarity as to how the department would approach this topic. So we're under the legislation that was brought, or the legislation brought by Representative Finke on gender affirming care, and I would like to understand better from the department how this statute would be applied for an individual's coverage if they are seeking to detransition.
Mr. Berkwitty.
Madam Chair, Representative Schultz, I left my folder for that bill up at my chair. So from memory, the department's position is that this bill simply codifies the existing standard of practice that is in place by executive order and has long been since 2015. So without my reference materials, my short answer would be in exactly the same way that it would be today.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the same question then, based upon current and common practice at the Department of Commerce, does that guidance provide for if an individual is detransitioning? So they made an initial decision to move from man to woman, and then moved, and then had a second, made a second decision to move from a woman to man.
Mr. Berkwitty.
Madam Chair, Representative Schultz, again, working without my reference materials, my recollection is Representative Finke and perhaps one of the testifiers discussed this in their testimony when this bill was being heard, that what you're describing is covered in the definition section. So without my materials, maybe I would defer to counsel, but I think that is covered.
Looks like we do have one of Representative Finke's testifiers from that bill in the audience.
Madam Chair.
Representative Schultz.
I would certainly be welcome to coming back to this, at which time that you have the chance to go get your notes. I'm seeking to get not the advocates. I'm trying to get what the department's position is on this language and your common practice. That's what I'm trying to find out. So what the department's, based upon your conversation over the executive order, I'm seeking to understand whether or not that is covered.
Mr. Brickwitty, to the 2015 executive order?
Madam Chair, there have been a series of executive order, excuse me, let me not misstate. There have been a series of administrative bulletins, the most recent of which resulted from an executive order. Representative Schultz, I'm not quite sure I'm following your question, and perhaps we can follow up online. I apologize. I've stated the department's position, which is the bill codifies the existing practice that is outlined in administrative bulletin and in the executive order. So I wouldn't expect anything to deviate in any way, shape, or form from what is currently in place in the state of Minnesota for those individuals.
Chair Stephenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Schultz, first of all, if the chair wanted to bring up a testifier to answer your question, that's the prerogative of the chair, not your prerogative. That's number one. Number two is, I think you heard Mr. Brickwitty say that we're not changing the policy with regard to deeds transitioning. If you want further clarification from the Department of Commerce, I'm sure he'd be happy to follow up with you offline. This is the second hearing we've had on this. You raised this at the earlier hearing. We had a discussion about it then. I think you've made your point. I think it's time to move on. Madam Chair.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Stephenson, I have an equal voice at this table, and I don't take your lectures very kindly. On constant occasions, you continue to come back to this table and tell me that my voice doesn't matter.
Personalities?
Mr. Schultz, Representative Schultz.
Madam Chair, I am asking a question of the department. As a member of the minority, this is my opportunity to get an understanding as to the practices of the department.
I believe that the department answered your question, Representative.
I asked a very specific question and did not get an answer to that, and instead I was directed to comments by the advocates of this particular language. I'm seeking to understand what the policy is and how that question would be for someone who is seeking to detransition.
Representative Schultz, I think we can follow up with the department offline. Thank you for your question. Representative Cleavorn.
Madam Chair, I don't have to add anything more. I believe we heard it just codifies existing practice. Thank you very much.
Further discussion, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just point out, I mean, I get that we can follow up online, but at this point, we're voting bills out of committee. Like, there isn't time to follow up offline anymore. It's reasonable to ask the department questions, especially at this point, and get answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, we have an extensive amount of time prior to conference committee, so there will be time to follow up offline and work out any questions that the department can answer.
Madam Chair.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Chair Katiza-Watun. Representative Stephenson, I wanted to talk a little bit about the prohibiting social media manipulation provision of the bill. And in particular, I just was curious. I'm sure you have been, like I have been, getting feedback from, industry folks and other people who, have insight into sort of the workability of some of these provisions. And I was just curious about the state of those discussions and how you're trying to incorporate those conversations into, there are a lot of pretty technical requirements here that seem like pretty good ideas to me, at least a lot of them, but if they work. And so my question for you really is sort of a broader one about the state of those, how those concepts are being incorporated into this language, which I can tell has changed somewhat, including I think some particularly excellent language on page 36, lines 7 through 9, relating to the Attorney General's authority to enforce this law. But if you could just speak broadly to sort of that topic about what feedback you've gotten and how you're incorporating it. Thanks.
Chair Stephenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Niska, for the question, and thank you also for the amendment that led to that language that you were just making reference to. Yeah, we have been working with stakeholders to refine this language with an eye to workability. You are correct to that. You know, I think members, there's obviously a long road ahead of us this session on this bill and on this subject. I think Minnesotans can be really proud of the work that's being done on this, because I think we are trying to tackle this question of social media and its impact on mental health in kids in a different way than has been tracked anywhere else in the country, and in a way that's more focused on the actual functioning of the system and less on trying to make sweeping content decisions. And I think that's really great, and I appreciate there's been kind of bipartisan interest in that and work on that, and I think we can be really proud of that. There's more work to be done, and I think workability is the place where we need to be focused, particularly in sort of, not in this bill, but in the underlying bill, subdivisions 1 and 2, which reflect both the engagement limits as well as the sort of prioritizing preference over engagement. We have to talk about that. I do think that, as in my conversations with some of the stakeholders in this, because this is a new idea, a lot of it is just kind of, what do you mean by that? What are you trying to get at? And then once we have that conversation, some of the workability concerns dissipate. They still remain. There's still more work to be done, particularly on those first 2 subdivisions of the bill, I think.
Any follow-up, Representative Niska?
Just one last comment on that, which is that I do think that it's the right approach as we're looking at this to try to help encourage a situation where users have control as much as possible over how they interact with the new technology and the way that that technology interacts with our human brain. And so we've had a number of conversations about this, but I think all of us who have access to a smartphone or a smart device and the ways that that affects the way that all of us think of all ages, but especially kids, should be interested in working on this topic. And I do like the overall structure, and I agree that there is still some work to be done. I did want, if we could, to turn to the junk fee provision, which is on page 18, and make a couple of comments, I suppose. One is that it is good that from the version that we originally saw until now, there are some safe harbors and some other things that that provide some clarity to a few specific types of businesses. I think those are the results of, particular industry groups who have the resources to come to us and alert us to the problems in those particular areas. And that's good that we're doing that. I do still have some really serious concerns, though, for every other industry that doesn't fall within one of the safe harbors that we are, again, as I said earlier, we're writing something into Section 325D, .44, which is a deceptive trade practices provision. It's a provision that really encourages private litigation, and we are essentially opening up every industry that hasn't come to us and found a safe harbor to some really vague language in this bill. 18.11 says, is not reasonably avoidable by the consumer. 18.12, a reasonable person would expect. Representative Greenman, when she was here, is correct that those are like common law legal terms that mean that a judge looks at a whole bunch of cases after the fact and tries to then decide what a reasonable person would believe or what's reasonably avoidable based on a bunch of case law. It doesn't provide clarity to businesses who are having to navigate this landscape and have a litigation target on their back. So I still think that that provision hasn't been fixed. And of course, as it relates to our earlier discussion, 18.14 and 18.15 are pretty interesting. They say, for the purposes of this subdivision, mandatory fee does not include taxes imposed by a government entity. Again, we're treating government entities in a way different from private businesses. We're letting our local cities have this new taxing authority. Again, not accountable or transparent to their voters in the same way that we are then requiring transparency and accountability for businesses, but in a way that they don't really know how it's going to work. So I think that those two provisions especially are kind of self-contradictory and mutually refuting of each other. But I do still, like I said, have concerns about the way that this junk fee provision sets up as well. So for a lot of reasons, I think there's some good in this bill, obviously, that I've spoken to, but it's not ready yet. Vote no.
Representative O'Driscoll.
I didn't know that I was on the list at this point, but if there are no other testifiers, I'll take it and we'll wrap it up.
To the underlying DE2 amendment, and then we'll move.
I have no comment. We'll just wait on the overall discussion on final passage of the bill from committee.
All right. Members, to the underlying DE2 amendment as amended, all in favor?
I need to make one motion before that.
All right.
After?
We're just voting on the adoption of the DE2 amendment as amended currently. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion prevails, and the DE2 amendment as amended is adopted. And so, members, since we have had extensive discussion on the DE2 at this point, we'll let Representative O'Driscoll make his final comments, and then we'll move to the chair.
And again, if there are no other comments, I will just back clean up if there's any of other members that.
Representative New Brinley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I didn't bother to do an amendment because, I get it. I get how this works, and that's fine. But I just want to make one comment about the federal, the DIDMCA provision in the bill. We talked about this pretty extensively, and I had asked in committee, and it was confirmed that it will exempt credit cards. And so my concern is that by continuing to include this provision, and I hope that maybe we can consider this moving forward, is that we are exclusively removing options from folks, but we are not giving them any new options in this provision by simply opting out. And by doing so, I am concerned that right now, someone could have 2 or 3 credit cards at 32% interest or whatever it might be, right? It's a terrible position to be in. But credit cards are exempted, so they'll continue to be able to do that. However, right now, they might not qualify for a traditional low-interest loan, but they might be able to consolidate those for 22%, which is a significant benefit to that individual. Removing this provision does not take away options like going to Wisconsin and doing a title loan and putting your car at risk for that benefit, to be able to get access to money. So this takes away options, but we're not providing anything new in this. And if the market, and if there are nonprofits, whatever, I mean, we heard from nonprofits, right, who are providing great service for folks. But if that nonprofit still exists, they're still giving those options. I heard a term just recently, luxury beliefs. I hadn't heard it phrased in that way before. But I think, you know what, those of us sitting around this table, we all have a decent salary here at the house. We get a really nice benefit package working here for the house. And frankly, most of the folks around this table have additional income streams. And so most of us, not all, most of us are not in this particular position. And it's sort of a luxury belief on our part that we're going to say, yeah, but you shouldn't have any option that's available to you. And because we're not solving a problem, we're only removing a piece of the puzzle that could actually be a solution for some folks, especially, like I said, because credit cards are exempted. So folks are still going to be in a position where they're paying really high credit card interest, but we're removing an option to lower that while not adding any additional opportunities. And I think that that's a problem. I mean, I think if we can actually solve a problem and fix it and provide other solutions, I'm all ears. I think that that would be helpful. But right now, all we're doing is taking away a solution. So I want to put that on the table. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Cha, brief
Just for a
comments.
quick comment here. Thanks for the cable company SPN, Director Esquez, for coming down. I was a participant in the DocU program for 15 weeks at SPN. I took that program. I graduated from that program, and it is a great program. So please support your local cable and SPN. Thank you.
Again? Okay. Chair Stephenson, final comments?
Is it Driscoll?
Representative O'Driscoll, do you have any closing comments?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and Chair Stephenson. As I've looked at the work that we've done this session, and I look at the bills that did make it into this omnibus bill and the bills that didn't make it in, I sort of feel like it's the Academy Awards, kind of the other good stuff that didn't get done, and some of the stuff that did get in here that probably isn't ready for prime time. As I look at the spreadsheet that we put together on our side, and the things that we have highlighted in green were things that we thought we had common agreement on with you. We had kind of like the traffic light. We had red, amber, and green. We had some amber things on, and we also had some red things that were on here. Things that I think that are good pieces of legislation that are going to help Minnesotans and that are bipartisan because it's just good consumer stuff. The securities bill, the octane bill, some of the other bills that deal with consumer protection that were in the agency bills. You heard our members really not challenge anything that's in there because it's good cleanup stuff. Where I noticed there's one thing in here, and we also had the liquor provisions that were not overly controversial that we had. There was one that was very glaring to me that didn't make it into the omnibus bill, and that was the bill that allows 17-year-olds to be able to serve alcohol in a restaurant where they are supervised by a staff where they're currently serving food. And it's kind of interesting because I had a group of people from the disabilities community, and maybe many of you did as well, that stopped by the office to visit with you this week. And one of the priorities that they had on their list of things was for med passers. And if you know what a med passer is, it's the person who administers medications at facilities like assisted living or nursing homes. And do you know what they had in that bill? They were saying because of the shortage of folks that are out there and finding staff, that they thought that it would be a good idea to engage people in the industry at a younger age, and they were asking for med passers to be able to have the age reduced to age 16 or 17. I started laughing, and they looked at me, and I said, I wish I would have had you folks testifying in committee in Commerce the day that I had the 17-year-old servers bill up, because what you are experiencing here is exactly what they're experiencing in the hospitality industry. And I said, I wish you well on this because, and their logic was literally the same as I put out here, just substituting the type of job that we had, that they could continue to work in their junior year, their senior year, the year that they go to college, and come back and provide relief on breaks. And they said that they're being very successful in recruiting people. They want people who want to do more, who are responsible individuals. And they kind of laughed too. They said, yeah, we know people who are 21 who are probably not quite as responsible as people who are 17. Same arguments that we had here. It was just amazing. So I wish them well on their endeavor to try to engage the youth and the younger population into a meaningful part of the industry. Things that I look at on here that I'm not quite as excited about would be the bills that we just talked about here at the end of our conversation today. We as Republicans on this committee tried to offer and protect the consuming public by asking for the right to have them have a vote and a say on whether or not the franchise fees were going to go up, or to have a vote on whether or not there's a majority or unanimous consent of the governing body to go in and to decertify a telephone company and to bring that at the local level. I'm reminded of some conversations that we had earlier in committee this week where someone said, well, I don't think we've ever done this in a business before. And I brought up and said, nope, the telecom bill did exactly that. It was taking private sector business and saying, we can do it better, and we're going to let the locals do it. And again, by a simple majority. So if you have 5 council members in a city of the 4th class, mayor and 4 council members, 3 of those people are going to decide the future of your phone company. Not 5, but 3. That's tough. Giving the people the opportunity to have a voice. As I mentioned earlier today, we also have in the this legislature a division on local property taxes, which deals with many of these issues where those have to go before the voter. Why are these issues different than what we would require other taxes, which, as Representative Newbrinley pointed out, taxes in statute are defined as fees? I think it goes all the way back to a topic called a health impact fee that a former governor talked about, and it all of a sudden had to become part of statute that fees are taxes and taxes are fees and forever forward. Today, when we bring that notion forward, that taxes are fees and fees are taxes, well, that's different. It's not different, folks. It's not. As I said, there's some good things in here, and we've worked in good faith to try to improve these bills and to improve this process, but we're not there yet. And I'm going to recommend to my colleagues, and I'll extend that recommendation to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, that we have a no vote on this bill today. Thank you, Madam Chair. To the bill author, thank you, sir.
Chair Stephenson, final thoughts on the bill.
I think we've had a good discussion today and throughout the hearing, so I won't speak specifically. I'll just say a major thank you to all members of the committee, to our wonderful staff, both partisan and nonpartisan, and to all members. I really do want to appreciate Representative Driscoll and the good working relationship that we've had and will continue to have. So I'd ask for a yes vote.
All right. Chair Stephenson renews his motion that House File 4077, as amended, be placed on the general register. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
No.
The motion prevails, and House File 4077, as amended, is placed on the general register, and nonpartisan staff is instructed to make any technical changes that are needed to reflect the will of this committee. Next on the list, members, we have House File 3488 from Chair Stephenson. Would you like to move and describe your bill?
Madam Chair, I'll move House File 3488 be placed on the general register, and I do have an author's amendment.
All right, yes, the A5. Chair Stephenson, would you like to move and explain the A5 amendment?
I will move the A5 amendment, which continues to update this bill as discussions have continued. It reduces the trigger for the trust on the per click or the preview content from 0.10 to 0.01, some 10 cents to 1 cent per view, and then make some other changes, including clarifying Attorney General enforcement, making sure that if someone is working as a social media influencer in violation of the statute, that they're entitled to 100% of the proceeds. The parents can't have any of it, where otherwise it's 30%. That's the A5.
All right. Members, any discussion to the A5 amendment, which gets the bill in the shape that the author would like? Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Stephenson, I was curious about that change from 10 cent to 1 cent per view, and I was wondering if you could just kind of give some sense about what that means in the real world when we're talking about YouTube creators or something like that.
Representative Stephenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Niska, I am continually being educated about this particular space. You would be shocked to learn that I don't have experience working as a social media influencer myself. But it's my understanding that 10 cents is such a high threshold that really would only cover a very small set of influencers, and going down to 1 cent still would allow a certain amount of activity before you would trigger the trust requirements, but at least moves it into a place where it's capturing a larger set of influencers.
Any follow-up, Representative Niska?
No, I appreciate that, Representative Stephenson and Chair Katiza-Watun. Yeah, I'd be interested to see the data exactly on where those breakdowns are. I think that would be really helpful to us in thinking about how this is calibrated correctly. But yeah, I also am, my 12-year-old son, I think, has a better sense of how this works than I do.
All right, members, any further discussion to the A5 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails and the A5 amendment is adopted. Chair Stephenson, to House File 3488 as amended.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this bill relates to children working as social media influencers. And as we just discussed, maybe some people aren't familiar with the concept of social media influencers applied to children. So let me tell you the story of Samia. Samia was an influencer before she could talk. Her parents, Adam and Latoya, are influencers themselves and began chronicling Samia's impending arrival on YouTube and Instagram in 2014 while Latoya was still pregnant. Samia's birth video is on YouTube, so she's been pretty much born into social media, Mr. Ali said. Samia is now 4 and has 143,000 followers on Instagram and 203,000 subscribers on YouTube. Her feeds are mostly populated with posts for posing and playing, but they also feature paid promotions for brands like Crayola and Homestyle Harvest Chicken Nuggets. This can be big money, members. According to the Washington Post, mom influencing is $1 billion industry. Kyle Fisher, the father of a 2-year-old identical twins who have more than 2 million followers on Instagram, said a sponsored post, one post on the girl's account fetches between $10,000 and $20,000. This industry also has a very dark side. A Utah influencer named Ruby Frankie was charged with multiple counts of aggravated child abuse as her 12-year-old son showed up in a neighbor's home, malnourished and with open wounds. Frankie's YouTube video channel documenting the lives of her 6 kids had over 2 million subscribers. Frankie's channel featured severe punishment, going without food, intense manual labor, and other extreme and odd punishments. One child reported being forced to sleep on a beanbag for months as punishment. Frankie pled guilty and is going to prison. Her YouTube channel was generating an estimated $1,000 each week. NBC reported the story of another child influencer. Cam said their mother began posting photos and videos of them on MySpace when they were in the 2nd grade. They didn't comprehend how many people were watching them growing up, Cam said, until their mother joined Facebook. Cam assumed that their mother knew that her thousands of friends personally, so they often accepted friend requests from random adults because their mother was a mutual friend. As a result, they'd sometimes receive disturbing messages. Quote, I remember I was 12 years old and I was riding my bike with my friends around the town that we lived in at the time and getting a Facebook message from the dad after saying, hey, I saw you riding your bike, Cam said. And it was from an older man and it just made me very uncomfortable. Cam, who is immunocompromised, said that throughout their childhood, they were repeatedly hospitalized for myriad health issues. Every time Cam had a new medical scare, they said their mother would immediately post about it on Facebook and people in Cam's real life would ask about it. Quote, it felt so invasive because I didn't tell anyone about my health situation. It was obviously all coming from what my mother was posting. Or consider the phenomenon of so-called mommy-run accounts. These are social media accounts purportedly for young kids, but actually run by their parents. Some of these accounts feature scantily clad pictures of tween and preteen girls. Some of these accounts offer access to even more content behind a paywall. Members, the New York Times recently did a major investigative piece on this phenomenon that I will email out to you, and I strongly encourage you to read it. I'm going to read just a couple of excerpts from it. Alyssa, a young woman, had been running her daughter's Instagram account since 2020 when the girl was 11 and too young to have her own. Photos show a bright, bubbly girl modeling evening dresses, high-end workout gear, and dance leotards. She has more than 100,000 followers, some so enthusiastic about her posts that they pay $9.99 a month for more photos. Over the years, Alyssa has fielded all types of criticism and knows full well that some people think she is exploiting her daughter. She has even gotten used to receiving creepy messages. But these were extreme. I think they're all pedophiles, she said of the many online followers obsessed with her daughter and young girls. Thousands of accounts examined by the New York Times offer disturbing insights into how social media is reshaping childhood, especially for girls, with direct parental involvement, encouragement and involvement. Some parents are the driving force behind the sale of photos, exclusive chat sessions, and even the girls' worn leotards and cheer outfits to mostly unknown followers. The most devoted customers send thousands of dollars nurturing these underage relationships. One calculation performed by an audience demographics firm found that 32 million connections to male followers among the 5,000 accounts examined by the Times. Interacting with the men opens the doors to abuse. Some flatter, bully, and blackmail girls and their parents to get racier and racier images. The Times monitored separate exchanges on Telegram, the messaging app, where men openly fantasize about sexual abusing the children they follow on Instagram and extol the platform for making the images so readily available. Quote, "It's like a candy store," one of them wrote. "God bless Instamoms," wrote another. In interviews and online comments, parents said that their children enjoyed being on social media or that it was important for a future career, but some expressed misgivings. Kaylin, whose daughter is now 17, said she worried that a childhood spent sporting bikinis online for adult men had scarred her. Quote, "She's written herself off and decided the only way she's going to have a future is to make a mint on OnlyFans," she said, referring to a website that allows users to sell adult content to subscribers. She has way more than that to offer. She warned mothers to not make their children social media influencers. "With the wisdom and knowledge I have now, if I could go back, I definitely wouldn't do it," she said. "I've been stupidly, naively feeding a pack of monsters, and the regret is huge." Account holders who report explicit images or potential predators to Instagram are typically met with silence or indifference, and those who block many abusers have seen their own account's ability to use certain features limited, according to the interviews and documents. In the course of 8 months, the Times made over 50 reports of its own about questionable material and received only one response. Meta, Instagram's parent company, found that 500,000 child Instagram accounts had inappropriate interactions every day, according to an internal study in 2020 quoted in legal proceedings. Members, this is a vile, unconscionable situation that has to stop. So the bill before you does two things. First of all, it prohibits children from working as social media influencers under the age of 14. Minnesota has a child labor law already that says you can't work under the age of 14 with limited exceptions, among those including being an actor or actress and being a model. So this clarifies that you can't be a social media influencer if you're under the age of 14. Second, it says that for minors who are above 14, if you get to a certain threshold of involvement, or of profit, I should say, that some of the money needs to be set aside for the benefit of the kids. This is similar to laws that have been enacted for many decades in film and TV, and at least one other state, Illinois, has adopted this for social media influencing. Members, I think this is an important bill. I think this is an emerging thing that a lot of us probably were not aware of going into session. I only learned about this phenomenon over the summer. We need to protect kids from the way that social media is adapting and modifying and creeping into really dark corners of the world. And so I urge members' support. Happy to take questions.
Members' discussion to the bill. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Stephenson. Yeah, there's a lot of really disgusting, concerning things happening online to our kids. And I did read the New York Times article when it came out, and I agree that every parent, probably every American should read that article and understand what is going on. This is only one angle at one aspect of this. I sure hope that those social media stakeholders who are talking to you on that other bill are listening and taking action on this issue as well. And I hope every parent out there is listening and taking action as they have control over it. I do think that this is going in the right direction on this particular point. I appreciate that you're still taking input and all that. But yeah, this is more importantly, I think, than even this legislation. I think that parents understanding the stuff that's happening out there and making sure that they're able to protect their kids and their kids' friends to the best that they're able to is really, really important. So thank you for bringing some light to that, as well as, trying to move forward on a policy solution.
Members, any further discussion to the bill as amended? I mean, Mr. Chair, if I may, I know that as representatives, we are not necessarily social media influencers, but we're on YouTube and we have social media accounts in many cases. And some of the messages that I've received as a grown woman to my email account here, and thinking about that inappropriate content and language and abusive language and threats that we sometimes receive in this space as grown-ups, again, who have chosen this type of career in the public eye. And so it's so hard to imagine that kids are not being protected from that. And the very least that we can do is include some parameters and allow them a semblance of a childhood before they're thrown out to the wolves of social media, for lack of a better analogy. But I appreciate your work on this, and let's keep working to make it better. So, any closing comments?
I took a very long introduction, so I'll just say it's a good bill. Please vote yes.
All right, members, to House File 3488 as amended, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The motion prevails, and House File 3488 as amended is placed on the general register. Last on our list for the day, and the chair will retain the gavel, House File 4991 from Representative Lislegard. Go ahead, and he's not going to go ahead. Chair's going to move the bill. The only one from the NAC committee today.
Thank you, Representative Katiza-Wattoon. I will move House File 4991 be laid over. And Representative Lislegard, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Which I will move, since you're not on the committee. I'll move the A1-1 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And by the way, this seat is very warm.
I was there a long time.
She's warm. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got to stay focused now. Yeah. The amendment removes the wholesale drug distributors because they are not subject to the provisions of the federal 340B drug discount program. Secondly, Mr. Chair, the amendment makes a minor technical fix that makes it clear the definition of covered outpatient drugs conforms to the federal statute. I would appreciate if you could adopt the A1-1 amendment.
All right. Any discussion to the A1-1 amendment? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails, and the A1-1 is adopted. We also have the A4, which we're not going to consider, so I'll turn the floor over to Representative Lislegard to describe this bill as amended.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for hearing House File 4991, which would prohibit large pharmaceutical manufacturers who make billions of dollars from illegally denying drug discount providers by the federal 340B drug program to safety net health providers serving the most vulnerable and communities across the state, mostly in rural Minnesota. I am carrying this bill because we all know that hospitals and their staff are facing funding deficits as they provide critical cares to Minnesotans. Reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid patients are falling far short of covering the cost to take care of these patients. If we fail to act, we run the risk of these rural hospitals closing from across the state. This problem is real and it cannot be denied, and the moment is before us to address it. This bill takes one step, just one step, and we need to take it now to provide some financial relief without costing the taxpayers of this state one dime. This won't cost the taxpayers of this state one dime. It will force these big drug companies to provide drug discounts that they have illegally found a way in 2020 a crack. And fortunately, the courts have just stepped in and allowed states like Minnesota to fix the problem and provide financial relief to our hospitals, patients, and communities by increasing the availability of drug discount mandated by Congress. They want this fight to be in Washington, D.C. Why? Because it's dysfunctional. All politics are local. Our communities and our hospitals are suffering. Nobody even knew about this bill because it's just happened. But now the state of Minnesota and the states across this country have an opportunity to do the right thing, and that is to save our hospitals. Put more money in the hospitals instead of big pharma that are making billions and billions of dollars at no cost to the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota. It's clear to me. Make no mistake about it. I wish we could take a vote that should be on the House floor as we speak right now. I want to see everyone vote. I want to know, are you with the patients? Are you with the rural hospitals? Are you with the hospitals? Or are you with Big Pharma? That's how simple this bill is. Yes, it's complicated. But we have an opportunity, and I think that we need to do it now. So for me, it's clear. Mr. Chair, you and I have discussed the enforcement mechanism in this bill. And we have heard from the Board of Pharmacy that they would not be the appropriate agency for this responsibility. So, Mr. Chair, I will work with you, the Department of Commerce, the Attorney General's office, and any stakeholder to make sure that it gets to the right place. That's what I'm committed to doing. But by God, this legislative body, both in the House and the Senate, need to take this up one way or another. I know that you're laying it over, and we need to have further conversations, Mr. Chair. But very rarely does the moment match up with the opportunity. And in this bill, it does. And we need to do the right thing for the state of Minnesota and the people that we represent all across the state of Minnesota. So with that, I am not the expert, not a doctor, don't play one on TV. The experts are here to answer any questions, any technical questions you have. So with me, I have the Vice President of Essentia, Casey Holtman. Did I say that right?
Kenzie Holman.
Kenzie Holtman.
Welcome to the committee, Ms. Holman. State your name for the record. Proceed to your testimony.
Kenzie Holman. All right, Chair Stephenson and members of the House Commerce, Finance, and Policy Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to testify today in strong support of House File 4991. As I stated, my name is Kenzie Holman. I'm the Vice President of Integrated Care at Essentia Health. Essentia Health is an integrated healthcare delivery system that serves mostly rural communities in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. In my role, I support our care teams in developing clinical programs and providing services to our patients across our footprint. Rural healthcare is at an inflection point. Continued pressures from unsustainable reimbursement models, workforce shortages, and the growing costs of readiness threatens our hospitals' abilities to ensure patients have access to local, high-quality care in their communities. This is especially true for Greater Minnesota, where I reside, where most of our patients are covered by government health insurance programs, Medicare and Medicaid, which by design pay healthcare providers less than the cost of care. For patients covered by Medicaid, reimbursement is not based on current costs and pays less than 70% of the cost it requires us to provide care. Depending on the service, the reimbursement gap can be much greater. This is just not sustainable. Essentia hospitals qualify to participate in the 340B program. As a safety net provider, the program allows us to purchase certain drugs from drug manufacturers at discounted prices and dispense them. Because Essentia does not own pharmacies in every rural city it serves, we partner with community pharmacies to dispense the discounted drugs that we purchase through the 340B program. By dispensing these discounted drugs through our community pharmacy partners, we can stretch these limited savings across our rural footprint and ensure that patients have access to comprehensive services, such as 24/7 emergency care, mental and behavioral health services, and primary care. This is exactly what the 340B statute was intended to achieve. In 2020, drug manufacturers started denying us 340B pricing if the drugs were dispensed through a community pharmacy or contract pharmacy. As a result, instead of us being able to purchase its discounted drugs and realize the savings, drug manufacturers are charging the full cost. While these discriminatory practices have led to record profits for drug companies, it's deprived our safety net providers the resources the 340B program was intended to ensure to our nation's most vulnerable and underserved patients, to allow us to have access to local and comprehensive healthcare services no matter where we live. Today, the entire 340B program accounts for just 3.1% of total drug company revenue. While this is just a fraction of the billions and billions of dollars of profit these companies make, it is a lifeline for us, for our safety net providers across Minnesota, and it ensures that patients have access to local services and high-quality comprehensive health care. The bill before you is simple. It preserves this lifeline for hospitals throughout Minnesota, not drug companies. For these reasons, we ask for your support. Thank you, Chair Stephenson and members of the committee for your time today. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. We'll now turn to testimony on the bill, and I'm going to remind folks to try and keep their comments to 2 minutes. First, we have Christina Moorhead. Ms. Moorhead, come forward, state your name for the record, proceed to your testimony. Welcome to the committee. And Ms. Homan, if you could, yeah. What? Oh, and after that will be Luke Slindy.
Chairman Stephenson, members of the committee, my name is Christina Moorhead, and I'm here on behalf of PhRMA. PhRMA agrees that it is important to ensure the 340B program benefits the safety net of underserved communities in Minnesota and is committed to this crucial federal program, but respectfully disagrees that this legislation will serve that purpose. The federal 340B program was established by Congress in 1992 to help safety net entities access affordable drugs to treat their low-income and uninsured patients. Due to weak oversight by HRSA, the program has expanded in a way that has allowed covered entities to divert their own benefit money intended to help patients get better care and afford their medicines. As a result, the 340B program has changed and grown dramatically since its establishment, yet charity care at 340B hospitals has declined to below national averages. House File 4991 would exacerbate problems in the program by forcing manufacturers to ship 340B drugs and extend 340B pricing to contract pharmacies, which is not mentioned in the federal 340B statute and has become significant revenue generators for certain covered entities, chain pharmacies, PBMs, and other middlemen. The requirements in this bill benefit thousands of contract pharmacies that are located out of state and large chain pharmacies, not patients. Minnesota's 340B hospitals have more than 2,100 contracts with pharmacies in 33 other states, including states as far away as Hawaii and Massachusetts. In addition, whether manufacturers can be required to ship 340B drugs to contract pharmacies is currently being litigated in several federal courts across the country. Arkansas and Louisiana have enacted laws similar to House File 4991 that are currently being challenged in federal courts. In 2023, Minnesota enacted transparency legislation that would require 340B hospitals to report to the Commissioner of Health on prescription drugs obtained through the program, and that includes reporting on contract pharmacies. Initial data for this is due to the state in just 10 days on the 1st of April. We would urge this committee to wait on passing additional legislation related to the 340B program until this data has been reviewed. Again, PhRMA is committed to safeguarding the 340B program. However, we believe that this legislation will not further that goal. I appreciate your time today and ask that you vote no on House File 4991.
Thank you. Next, we have Luke Slindy, who will be followed by Keith Harvey. State your name for record, proceed your testimony. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, Luke Slindy. Hello, my name is Luke Slindy. I'm a second-generation Minnesota pharmacist. My career is focused on Medicaid, prescription drug pricing, and how pharmacies are paid to dispense medication. And just to be very clear, I have absolutely zero connection to any pharmaceutical manufacturers. I testify today to oppose House File 4991, which seeks to expand the impact of the 340B drug pricing program in Minnesota, as well as provide a warning to the public about this deeply flawed and widely exploited federal program. 340B is an opaque program that is not possible to fully understand without access to non-public or proprietary pricing information. This is specifically what I mean. While overall 340B is complicated, the most simplified description is that it is a mechanism for some healthcare providers to buy prescription drugs at well below market prices and then resell the same drugs at market prices and then use the profits to cross-subsidize other activities. Therefore, in order to actually understand how the program works, you need to know, 1, the below market purchase prices of the drugs, 2, the resale prices, and 3, the amount of profits captured in between. You cannot make educated decisions about 340B without knowing that pricing information, which unfortunately is withheld from state legislators and more broadly, the general public. Another important aspect of this bill, if passed, is the increased amount of profits it would generate for 340B contract pharmacies, which mostly means more money for the following Fortune 20 companies: Walmart, United Health Group, CVS Health, Cigna, and Walgreens. If you are unclear of what I am referring to, you should not vote to advance this bill. Given the complicated nature of 340B, the enormous amounts of money involved, and the lack of free time available to legislators before the end of this legislative session, I recommend that the state government not attempt to make any changes to 340B this session. Unless legislators have a full and nuanced understanding of how 340B affects healthcare delivery, including the drug prices I mentioned previously, Any rushed legislative changes will result in a high likelihood of making healthcare in Minnesota worse, regardless of any good intentions. This is more complicated than it has been presented. Respectfully, if legislators' ultimate goal is to increase funds to hospitals and other safety net providers, the legislature should provide that funding directly from the state government and not through an expansion of the problematic 340B federal program. Thank you, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Keith Harvey, who will be followed by Kristen Jacobson. Mr. Harvey, come forward, state your name for the record, proceed to your testimony. Welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Keith Harvey. I am the CEO at Scenic Rivers Health Services in Cook, Minnesota. I am here on behalf of my federally qualified health center, as well as the Minnesota Association of Community Health Centers and the 17 federally qualified health centers that they represent. We would like to express our support for House File 4991, and I want to thank Representative Lislegard for introducing the bill and the committee for considering this proposal. At Scenic Rivers, we serve a 8,300 square mile area with 7 medical and 4 dental clinics spread over 3 counties. We have over 14,000 patients who rely on Scenic Rivers for medical, dental, and behavioral health services. FQHCs serve over 167,000 patients statewide. 2 other health centers have wide service areas such as ours. FQHCs are covered entities under the federal 340B program. We can provide our patients with significant discounts for their prescription drugs through our in-house or contract pharmacies. Due to limited funding, only 3 health centers have in-house pharmacies. Therefore, FQHCs rely largely on contract pharmacies to provide services to our patients. Health centers statewide have over 100 contract pharmacy relationships. Since mid-2020, 12 drug manufacturers have restricted drugs shipped to FQHC contract pharmacies in the United States. These restrictions fall disproportionately hard on FQHCs, limiting access to pharmacy services at discounted rates for our patients who are eligible for it. Our patients already face significant barriers to care. Social determinants of health, or in our case, vast geographic distances. In this bill, if this bill is enacted, health centers could contract with additional pharmacies across our service area. From our patients' perspective, this creates additional access points to discounted and needed pharmacy services.
And Mr. Harvey, I'll need you to wrap up your testimony.
Okay. For example, under current circumstances, Scenic Rivers has 1 contract pharmacy with the Big Fork Valley Hospital. Scenic Rivers patients from Tower or Floodwood might have to travel 70 or more miles to get those discounted drugs. This bill would allow us to contract with additional pharmacies to provide patients on the range and FQHC patients statewide increased access to affordable prescription drugs. For us, it's not about revenue, it's about access for our patients. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you. Last, we have Kristen Jacobson. State your name for the record, proceed to your testimony. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Kristen Jacobson, and I'm the CEO of Johnson Memorial Health Services, a small rural independent hospital 150 miles west of the Twin Cities in the town of Dawson. I am here to testify in strong support of the 340B contract pharmacy proposal, known as the Safety Net Stabilization Act. The 340B program is not just a policy, it's a lifeline for our rural healthcare providers. Over the last 2 years, our operating margins have been negative. And this last year, a negative 4.8%. Without the 340B program, we and many hospitals across greater Minnesota may not be here today. This program enables us to extend a range of critical services to our community through cost savings. for primary care services, inpatient services, and long-term care services. Unfortunately, the very essence of this federal program is under threat, and I'm really sad to hear that. Our finances have been negatively impacted by large for-profit pharmaceutical companies restricting contract pharmacies, funneling resources meant for our vulnerable communities into their multi-billion-dollar profits. Our 340B savings benefit has dropped to nearly half from what it was in 2020. This is not only undermining our program's intent, but directly impacts our ability to maintain services, which could lead to healthcare access issues in our rural communities. The Safety Net Stabilization Act is vital, and I urge you to support this. It prohibits these discriminatory practices, ensuring 340B savings that continue to support safety net providers like us. The fact is our patients utilize different pharmacies based on their own preferences. This is not about additional state funding, but preserving safety net providers. Funded by drug manufacturers, the 340B program is intended to help patients, and it is crucial for our operation and health of our communities. This legislation represents a step towards health equity, ensuring rural and underserved Minnesotans have the access to affordable medications they desperately need. It's about keeping our doors open and our community healthy. I urge you to support this passage and help us protect patient care and access across Minnesota. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We'll now move to member discussion and questions. Discussion to the bill. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Lislegard. A few of us at the table have spent many, many hours discussing this issue. We had a hearing, I think, in December where we discussed this and other managed care, Medicaid issues. And this issue particularly is very interesting, and I think our hospital folks, I've talked to many of them, and certainly I've been in close contact with the Hospital Association. They know that I've actually been supportive broadly, because frankly, our hospitals are in trouble. And as someone just said, you know, without this, their operating margins, they're already negative. There's hospitals that wouldn't make it. So I totally get that. What I was surprised by, and I hope you're all sitting down. I'm a little bummed that Representative Liebling is not here today. But she understands this pretty in depth. And I was surprised coming out of that hearing that I came much closer to her position on 340B. And I just wanted to, I want to set the table before I ask a couple of questions because it is so complicated. So I apologize, Mr. Chair, but I hope I can get just a little bit leeway because of that. But it is really complicated. So right now, this 340B program was set up by the feds. This is a federally mandated program, and it's literally to support our hospitals, our safety net covered entities, right? Like that's the point. When they have access to 340B, that benefits the covered entity as a whole. They're not required to use that financial benefit in any specific way. So the point is, which is exactly how it's supposed to function, right? It's supposed to benefit the entity so that it can better serve that community as a safety net covered entity. That's how it's supposed to function. Interestingly, one of the things that was said, I pulled up the presentation, and there were a couple of things that create issues. And in fact, I did not talk to, and I apologize if I get the name wrong, Mr. Slendy. I did not talk to him at a time. I have never met him, but I had several of the same kinds of notes. And one of them is that, you know, something I said in the hearing is that this 340B program might not actually be the best way to support our hospitals, our safety net entities, right? That it's actually, there is a little perverse incentive here that can be potentially problematic. But of course, the point I made is, well, we got to make our hospitals whole. So if it's not this, then as I think, I apologize if I misquote, but as Mr. Slendy indicated, then the state has to do that, right? Like, we've got to figure out a way to do this properly. Ultimately, it comes down to, this is what was said in the committee, ultimately it comes down to which entity is capturing the profit. Now, the entity capturing the profit, I don't believe, and so I guess this would be my first question, because we've heard, you know, are you with the patients? Are you with the patients on this? And someone else suggested we can offer patients significant discounts, this kind of thing. My question is, under this program, are those financial discounts, is there a requirement to pass that on to the patient, to the individual patient who is receiving the the prescription medication?
Representative Lislegard.
Mr. Chair, before I turn it over to the expert, I will just say, if there is no hospital, there's no care. And that is, I'll let her answer to your specific thing, but this is one tool in the toolbox that instead of the money going to the big pharma, which is, I think it's over I don't know, I read something like over $8 billion in just this program, it's going to the hospitals to be able to provide the care. They're on razor-thin margins, right? They have to forgive, or they do forgive. Medicare and Medicaid only reimburses so much, so they're writing off, our hospitals are writing off stuff, right? And the pharmaceutical companies, they're making billions and billions of dollars while these hospitals are struggling to stay alive to provide the very service. So for me, I'll let her answer specifically, but for me, if the hospital's not there, the patient's not getting the care, so.
And Ms. Holman, I think Representative Brindley's question was, is there an obligation to pass on the savings to the patient?
Correct, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Representative. As stated earlier, the 340B program, the intent is to utilize the resources, the savings from 340B, to stretch scarce resources. So there isn't, as you stated, direct correlation to the patient, you know, passing that direct amount. It's to ensure that all patients have access to comprehensive care and to be able to provide those services like behavioral and mental health services that don't have adequate reimbursement, to address what we talked about with our Medicaid reimbursement being 70% of our costs. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's where Representative Lislegard's comment about no hospital, no care, I guess, is so important. Representative Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's exactly right. That's the point I made, right? It's unrestricted income. And so for our covered entities, they've got that unrestricted income to use to benefit the community. However, is there any requirement for the pharmacy, for the contracted pharmacy, to pass that benefit along directly to the patient?
Ms. Holman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for the question. The contract pharmacies receive a dispensing fee from the hospital or covered entity for the processing and dispensing of that product to the patient. They need to counsel the patient on the drug. They need to package it. They need to dispense it. So they receive a dispensing fee that's relatively nominal for that service.
Representative Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what that means is, no, there is no requirement to pass the benefits along to the patient in either scenario. So I just want to level set that because there were several comments made about how this gets passed along to the patient, and it doesn't. It doesn't. And again, for the covered entities, I get that. That's the whole point of the program, unrestricted. However, so this is where my rub comes in. It's because going back to that hearing, this is about which entity is capturing the profit. And I believe Mr. Slendy, again, is the one who said that, you know, we need to make educated decisions, for one thing. We don't have all the information. But interestingly, Minnesota is the first state. We're the only state to require this study that's coming out shortly. So I hope that we will hold off on moving this forward, at least until that study comes out, so that we actually have additional information, because I do think that's actually a critical piece of this. That's going to be really, really important, especially because what we do know, and this is where the rub comes in. Since 2010, these contract pharmacy agreements have increased by literally thousands of %, right? So we've got a ton of these contract pharmacy agreements now, where we used to have this many, which was probably appropriate because they were working very closely with our local safety net covered entities, and that is completely ballooned. And in that same time, these pharmacies are also capturing a lot more money from that as well. Again, here's the rub. As Mr. Slendy indicated, the folks who are capturing this revenue are Walmart, CVS, Walgreens. These are big Fortune 500 for-profit entities. Now, to be clear, you're not going to be surprised to know, I got no problem with these big for-profit companies. They clearly provide a service that people want and need and participate in. I got no problem with that. However, what this ends up doing with the expansion in this bill, it allows us to say, what this is going to do, it is going to force us to say, we are going to take money from one successful for-profit entity and force them to give that to another successful for-profit entity. There is a benefit directly from pharmaceutical manufacturers to CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, these very successful Fortune 500 companies. So that is certainly concerning. And in that then, with knowing that, my question is, will this allow for-profit contract pharmacies to charge fully insured patients these steep markups and then pocket the difference instead of passing on those savings?
Ms. Homan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative. So in terms of, could you repeat your question again about them retaining, could you state your question one more time? Sorry.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this new language, or with the language generally, does this allow for a for-profit contract pharmacy to charge, we're talking fully insured patients, does this allow charging fully insured patients the steep markup on the pharmaceutical and just pocketing that difference instead of passing along those savings to the patient?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative. Again, the drug, the 340B drug, is purchased by the hospital and has retained ownership by the hospital. What the pharmacy is receiving is a dispensing fee.
Okay, so we are a little over 3.5 hours into this hearing. The bill is being laid over. We have one member on the list. So I'm inclined, Representative New Brindley, if you have one more, and I gave you a lot of run-up on all three of those questions. So maybe no run-up, just a question on this, Representative New Brindley?
This one is literally just a question. With the unrestricted revenue to our covered entities, as we've discussed, that has a general community benefit, right? Are the contract pharmacies required to share the revenue they receive for 340B prescriptions toward a community benefit, which of course is the intention of the 340B program? Are the pharmacies, are the contracted pharmacies likewise required to share that revenue to benefit the community?
Ms. Homan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative. The 340B savings, again, are brought back to the covered entity to share those resources with the community. The contract pharmacy dispense fee is part of, how they pay for their processing and prescription, so I can't speak to that.
Okay, so we're going to go to the one other member on the list, give Representative Lislegard a chance to closing comments, and then we're going to lay over the bill. Representative Katiza-Watoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Holman, I'm hoping that you can help clarify a little bit. Just in discussion and through some other testimony, do these covered entities, are they only these Fortune 500, Fortune 20 pharmacies? I was understanding that there was some locally owned, smaller rural pharmacies. I just wanted to clarify that.
Ms. Holman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative. The covered entities are the hospitals, the safety net providers. And because safety net providers, when the medications are drugs that patients self-administer, either an injection, and we're seeing more and more self-administered medications, those drugs need to be dispensed through a pharmacy. And if you do not have a pharmacy that you own that's accessible to patients, you must contract with a pharmacy to dispense those services. And so that's really how we rely on contract pharmacies to provide access to 340B drugs.
Representative Katiz-Watun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of these changes, and I don't serve on the Health Finance Committee, so it's new to me, but I have been a supporter of rural pharmacies. My sister-in-law is a pharmacist, and we own property up in north central Minnesota, and we've actually visited some of the local pharmacies in that area, and I think that it is really critical that however we can get additional funds to these facilities that are serving rural Minnesotans is really important. So I mean, considering this and considering other options is really great. And Representative Lislegard, you are just a never-ending champion for folks on the range and across greater Minnesota, and appreciate you bringing this bill forward. That seems that it would make a big difference.
I'm going to give Representative Harriman like 30 seconds.
I got this from you, so I promise you.
Thank you.
I know the bill's going to be laid over, but I just have one quick question, Chair and Representative, and that is, I'm on the Health Finance Policy, and I'm just sitting here, everyone says complicated, go to the right place. I'm the same, want the same intentions. What do you see, or how do you, and maybe you can't even answer this, but it really should go to the Health Finance and Policy. I'm not the boss here, but it does sound like that is where it should go, so we can also talk about it.
So the bill's being laid over today. There will be additional work done on the bill. If it comes back up, we'll decide at that point what we do with the bill. It will depend on what's in the bill, where we are in session, everything else. So certainly there are health issues potentially in play here, but I think it's going to depend on where we go with the bill going forward. So we're laying the bill over today. Representative Lislegard, closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Let's be real clear. Nobody is opposed to this bill except Big Pharma. That's just the truth. And this is going to help, it's going to help the hospitals in greater Minnesota, which the majority on the right-hand side, you're there, I'm with you. And we need to do everything that we can. I heard the one gentleman say, we need to hold off and hold off. Well, delay, so then they can kill it. And at the end of the day, I would love to see who's going to stand with Big Pharma or who's going to stand with the local hospitals and the communities and serving the patients of this state. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Lislegard. The bill is laid over. Thank you to all members of the committee and staff for the long hearing. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.